All right, back with Summoning Insight, World's Mega Preview. No intro, just guests forever in this episode. We're getting right into it. Joining us is Wolf, who was supposed to join us a few weeks ago to talk about Korean Gauntlet, LCK Finals. We probably don't have time for all of that, but
really.
He's a Worlds caster now, guys. If you didn't know Wolf before this, he's done many different games, StarCraft, Overwatch, Heroes of the Storm, World of Tanks. I don't even know what else in Korea. Now he's here in League of Legends. He's one of the finest, highest pedigreed casters in the world in history. He's cast the best games, and that's why he was uniquely qualified to cast Red Canids versus Peace Gaming in the World's Play-ins at 6 a.m. Korean time. Don't say anything, Wolf. Just let it go.
To be fair, Monty, that is basically the Asian region expert equivalent of when they let Freak just do all those Worlds finals between two Asian teams that he has watched 4 games of and just been reliably told stuff he misinterpreted through his brain from a real expert, So to be fair, it's quite similar. If anything, some would say the stakes are a bit higher in that one, but it's just me, isn't it? By the way, though, I will say, Wolf, going into this episode, I don't know if you try to keep your finger on the pulse of the community, but you are actually in the prime spot, which is, I'd say, probably the worst spot to be in as an expert, which is because you cover a small region, everyone for credibility has to pretend to follow. It means that when your takes are even slightly misaligned with theirs, instead of them going, well, to be fair, I did only watch 8 LCK games and mainly just the finals. Maybe Wolf's right and I'm not right about this. They go, he doesn't even know what he's bloody talking about, does he? Look, he doesn't know anything about the fucking else. He's fake, so it's all fraud. So you can't win, mate. If you have any take that's different from other people, by the way, the type we love to hear on this show, they're all wrong, and you're just biased, and you still have Koreans.
I have every time I cast a T1 game, I have people telling me that I'm both biased for and against T1.
Oh, that's when you know you've nailed your job, by the way. When they can do that, by the way, you're actually the best. Because that means you're triggering the stupid people on both sides. So I think that's a good compass, mate. Stick with that.
Yeah, I used to have the problem where people would call me a T1 fanboy, even though, which I could tell meant that they never watched any of my content or any of my casts, because the whole dynamic that I had with Doa was that I was the KT fan and he was the SKT fan, right? So it is hilarious to get that even today, that I am the ultimate SKT/T1 fanboy, which was never true at all.
I mean, as it turns out, if you say good things about teams that do good things, people always just assume you love them or that you're biased, even if they're strongest. So when I cast Heroes of the Storm, I had to cast MVP Black, beating literally everyone forever. And then I was really biased because I said they were good. It's just how it happens sometimes.
and by the way, this is for those of you who don't know, this is a team that went on one of, if not the greatest winning streak in esports history. How many matches in a row was it?
It was like 43 best of 3s or 5s in a row or something like that. It was ridiculous.
That might be the record then. I'm almost sure that would be the record.
It was crazy. It was actually insane.
No more dead MOBA that was killed by Blizzard. Now we're into a live MOBA, sort of. But let's go to your impressions of Hanwha life in the play-ins, because let me give you my take first. Okay. Atlas came on and he said, well, I just want to watch Chovy body everybody. And I was like, that sounds great. And Chovy did not really body anybody.
He did in lane, he definitely did outlane everyone, but obviously there's more of the game than that.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not saying Chovy was bad. He did his job. It was just not the Chovy pop-off performance that a lot of
the John Wick shit that we sort of expected. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which I will admit, the expectations for that were very high.
Of course.
So, but he did his job. Deft was the one who arguably popped off a little bit more. They make it very easily past a Beyond Gaming team that had another gambling controversy, which, I'm sure the three of us knowing Korean esports could go on forever about this, and you coming from StarCraft could go on forever about this, but let's not deal with that. That was just stupid.
Don't do that.
Don't do that shit. So what were your takes on Hanwha and their performance? Because it was not particularly thrilling, but it was stable.
It was about what I kind of expected in terms of where they landed. I thought they were going to lose to LNG, but get out of the group in second place by beating everybody else. It was pretty stock standard. They ended up smashing that final tiebreaker match against BYG. With the circumstances that you just mentioned surrounding that wasn't a big shock to anyone. And yeah, I mean, Chovy did win lane a lot and had prio in most of the games, but he also played good matchups, so not really a shocker. He played Azir a lot, which is not really a surprise. I think it was a surprise to a lot of people to see him continue to play Azir. I think He's a player who's going to play Azir in a kind of developing meta because it's going to give him prio in almost every matchup. He's just going to CS a lot, and then he's going to be useful in every team fight later on. That's kind of his MO. I wasn't impressed by Chovy. It was just kind of standard Chovy to me. I also think it's a meta where you don't really have mid carries so much. It's kind of just okay, I get prio and I help feed my top lane and feed my bot lane, because bot is actually really relevant in this tournament, and Misfortune and Lucian are super important for different reasons. But my biggest takeaway for Hanwha Life was that Willer and Morgan didn't suck. And that's kind of been the story of Hanwha Life.
Was middling.
Sure, yeah, the competition wasn't as great, but the decision making that Willer and Morgan had, I thought, was a lot better. Morgan laned a lot more aggressively than he usually does, and also Willer usually just kind of plays Chovy's bodyguard and just helps Chovy do better and win the game. That's kind of how he plays jungle. But in this tournament, I think he really pushed advantages very well. His sense of how to punish the enemy jungler, how to read the map was better. His vision control was better. And it seems like the Hanwha Life coaching staff is tried to use play-ins to kind of level up their missing parts. And then Def performed extremely well. It's a meta where if you can win that 2v2 super hard in the early game, you can snowball it super hard, whether that's with a Misfortune and then the lane gets camped, or whether that's with a Lucian where you just win lane. If you have a great support with you, you can be really oppressive, you can bully, you can get a nice tempo advantage. I mean, he was getting 30 CS up on people, and 40 CS up on people before the mid game was even happening. So it was pretty insane to see Def perform. And Def performed extremely well at the end of regular season, even though they didn't make playoffs. And then in the gauntlet, he popped off there as well. So Def looks to be in really full form. Chovy seems as you'd expect. And then Willer and Morgan seem upgraded.
To put a stat on this, Chovy actually in the play-ins had the highest CS differential at 10 of any player, which was, 25. 25 CS up at 10 minutes, which is insane. It is insane. That is crazy.
Especially because he'll have played it's going to be 10 games or something. He played a decent amount of matches.
Yeah.
Yep.
He also lost one. So it's not even like they went, for a perfect run or anything like that. But I think that how Chovy plays the game is often very selfish. And that's something that we've talked about on this show, even throughout the year, about how he's give me all the money, give me all the CS, I'm going to carry. And that's how it's going to be. And you could feel a shift away from that to a certain extent with Hanwha Life Esports over the last few months. So I'm happy to see that. However, looking forward, I don't think I would predict Hanwha Life to necessarily get out of their group, which is the Fnatic group with PSG Talon and RNG. I just think that Hanwha Life, while they looked better and they kind of impressed me in the improvements they made, I still don't think they're on the same caliber as RNG just yet. I think Fnatic is the big question mark. We'll see if Willer can actually tango with Bwipo, because if Bwipo just outperforms him, and they have Hylissang doing very well, I see a world where maybe they go 1-1 with Fnatic best case in that double round robin. But I don't see them beating RNG. And then PSG Talon is another one of those question marks, where they looked very good at MSI, but then they were a lot closer to Beyond Gaming recently, and we saw how that went for Beyond Gaming, not so well. So it's tough to say, but I'm not very bullish on Hanwha Life getting out of the group necessarily.
I think the thing that people need to remember about PSG Talon is that Beyond Gaming could have just had a massive underperformance, and it's not necessarily reflective of how PSG Talon is going to do independently in their own group, right? I still think that we should probably consider them a pretty strong team overall, although I do think Group C is incredibly difficult to predict. I also don't think Hanwha is likely to get out of that group, but they're also, by the same token, I believe there's only been 2 Korean teams ever that have failed to get out of groups at Worlds.
I'd also throw in as well that I think people did actually underestimate the underdogs in Group B. If you look at the obvious one was DFM. I mean, we saw that at MSI already when they had a slightly different team. In theory, they have a better team now. We already knew they had potential, but the one that I actually asked a bunch of the people on this show when we did the preview was the Galatasaray team that nobody was looking at, because nobody gives a fuck about Turkish esports, except, by the way, when Europe and everyone else just keeps importing all the people who are the bloody MVPs there, and then they all become quality players. You'd think that'd eventually click. It's almost like there's a pipeline. So if I go to the beginning of the pipeline, look, there's oil at the beginning of this pipeline. What the fuck? Like, give me a break. So yeah, to me, the Galatasaray one, it was always primed that one of these other teams I think could win some best of ones. So I think the Beyond team, they already could have lost those games, and then you add in the whole fucking side plot of like, who knows what the fuck was going on behind the scenes with this like leaking the picks and stuff. It doesn't sound like a team that came with the mental really primed to be a dominant team, live up to the region, you know.
It wasn't my era of LCK because obviously I came this year, but Crazy was playing for Galatasaray, and it was cool to see him return because I've heard his reputation. I mean, I watched a lot of his games back in the day, but I wasn't like plugged into the LCK watching every day. And I always remember him because he's in that OGN opening. Like, he's actually the representative in that one. So I remember him specifically, and I thought he played very well. And every time I mentioned that to Atlas, he was like, yeah, well, that's not what it was like back in the day when he was in LCK. He was famously one of the worst top laners of all time. So I thought it was cool to see him do well, given that backstory and given that history. I know you and I talked about Detonation Focus Me. You texted me when we were watching that Cloud9 game, and like, I feel like Detonation Focus Me. It's cool to see the story they got out of the group first, but it felt like it was donated to them rather than they earned it in that Cloud9 series.
They are the fifth Korean seed, though, logically, Wolf.
Yeah, I mean, basically, with the roster they have.
Technically, yeah.
3/5.
Also, like to go back to your point about Crazy. What's also interesting is their coach is Irayan, who was on Zenix Storm as an AD carry in like 2012 and 2013, and he's part of that whole crazy like Zenix legacy in Korean League of Legends with that had players like like a ton of players. Impact,
loads of really good ones.
Frozen,
Swift,
like
Falco, all these guys on that team.
Yeah,
that's some pretty banging players.
So over a couple of years, Zenix actually surfaced a lot of the talent that still survives today. So it's actually cool that he's still coaching actively and is on that team as well. So just kind of a fun side note to the Galatasaray, even though they didn't make it.
I think that if you look at the group B with T1, Edward Gaming, Detonation, Focus Me, and 100 Thieves, like I don't think there's like any way T1 doesn't get out of that group. I just don't see it. I don't.
Why are you so bullish on that? Because I think that group is kind of difficult to predict. Like,
is that because you're bullish on 100 Thieves, or?
Look, 100 Thieves ended the season strong, and it's not the same scenario as it was last year. Like, when TSM ended in first seed in NA, there were a million reasons not to have faith in them at Worlds. They were running strats that you knew were not going to work at the World Championship. They were barely winning every game out of the losers bracket in 5 games. Like, yes, 100 Thieves didn't end the season strong, but they also came back revitalized and had a pretty potent playoff run, I would say. And they have a really, like, dominant early game. So I think that if EDG or T1 are taking them to the late game even, that's how you beat 100 Thieves. But I'm not sure T1 is going to survive necessarily, like, be able to crush the early game against 100 Thieves. So I think T1 is likely to get out of that group, but I do think there's a scenario where 100 Thieves gets out.
I suppose I could maybe see it, but I think Edward Gaming is the strongest. Sure. EDG is the strongest in the group. They're actually like my favorite, I think, to win the whole tournament. I think they're really, really strong right now. And I know everybody's talking about FPX and Nuggery and all that, but I'm definitely looking towards EDG. But anyway, back to the 100 Thieves point, like, I think one of the potential weak points for T1 would be Owner in the jungle if he gets nervous, but he's not playing in front of a crowd, right? I mean, this is not like really the full normal LAN experience.
Yes, exactly.
And Closer is one of the up and coming rising stars for 100 Thieves. So if somehow that goes poorly and Kana gets camped on the top lane and then someday is able to get an advantage there, like I could maybe see it happening. But T1 is actually, generally speaking, these days a lot more aggressive of a team. They like to play around tempo. That's part of the reason why they ended up making Owner the main jungler towards the end of the season. As soon as they basically kicked their old coaching staff out and Stardust came in and Faker was running the team, they were like Owner all the time, and they ramped up their tempo a lot. They were very aggressive, playing around, trying to get ganks on the top side, trying to get ganks in mid, giving Kana a lot more counter picks. So I think that T1 is not going to be weak in the early game in that particular matchup. I don't think they'll be running into really major challenges in terms of Detonation Focus Me, because the mechanical skill gap is just so high that I think the conversation is like almost not worth having, especially in terms of the macro. Like Dead Nation Focus Me have thrown away so many games this year that they had won, including against Damwon Kia at MSI, if you guys remember, where they just made really poor decisions because they got nervous or just thought they were further ahead than they were. But then when you talk about EDG, the bot difference, I think, is where things can get a bit concerning because I think Viper is the strongest AD carry in this tournament, and we don't even know who T1 is going to be fielding.
It'll be Gumayushi. Come on. They're not going to play Teddy.
I think it depends how the group goes, dude. I think what they do is they do the classic Korean move where you start with Gumayushi, but then if you go like 1-2 or something crazy, you just bring Teddy in and it's like, right, just play safe, just fucking let's not make any mistakes. I think they do the old classic like that, you know.
But you got to love the fact that Gumayushi and Korea versus Viper and Mako is probably like the most hype matchup between T1 and EDG. Although Faker Scout, the kind of like apprentice master, is pretty sick too. I mean, there's a lot of really good storylines here.
Yeah. I think that if they want to play around Kana and try to control that matchup against Flandre, then a lot of resources have to go there. And I think that's when you want to play Teddy, because Teddy is a guy who's not going to mess up the lane. Like, he's just going to be fine. He's really similar to Ghost in that regard, where he will just play fine and stay even in farm, regardless of circumstances, and then perform well in the late game when he has the money and has the items. He's less of a tempo-based AD carry player and more of a late game carry type player. I think Gumayushi is kind of more mid-range, which makes him better in most scenarios, which is why I think they play him more often than Teddy. But if you want to play around Kana and you want to put all the resources in the soul lanes and leave the bot lane alone, first of all, I think that could be a losing strategy right now in this meta. But because you're not trying to get like late game carry Lucian or late game carry Misfortune necessarily, you want to actually use those champions to get a tempo advantage. I think that if you want to play on the top side, Teddy could be strong. If you want to play like Ezreal in the late game, you want to play Aphelios. But either way, I think just the fact that you have this split and we're not even sure who's playing necessarily is a bit of a concern for me. And I also just, I mean, like, you guys said that you think they're going to play Gumayushi, but we thought they were going to do that in the finals. They played Teddy and they swapped Gumayushi in late. They are very much like a last minute decision team right now, including like ripping their coaching staff out. So we don't really know what we're going to get. I hope the scrims are going well. I hope they are going to play up to the level that we saw from them at the end of summer, because they were the second best team in the LCK. They were far and above Gen G.
Oh, we should talk about Gen G though, because here's the thing, Wolf. When you actually look at their group,
yeah, exactly. Do we have to?
In their group, like, mate, I would take them to come first in their group. I actually think they've got a nice group. If you look all things considered, where they were coming from, who you could have had in your group, especially because here's the thing. I don't give a fuck. Yes, in best of ones, having like a crazy ceiling can allow you to. That's going to be a consistent team, dude. Like, I could see them just grinding out the 4 wins, and then they go. There's first place.
A really good meta for BDD. You've got Syndra back in the meta. Azir obviously still
yeah,
working.
Of course.
So I like their chances. LNG also is somewhat unproven because they just went through the group without really showing any weaknesses. They didn't actually have to like try hard per se. Tarzan just kept getting Kiana and he was like, I'm just going to play this and I'm going to win and it's fine. So that's kind of a bit of a question mark. And then Team Liquid, I'm not too worried about that in terms of the mechanical skill difference there. And like Genji has made some decision-making problems. They have had some positional issues. Like Genji will drop some weird games in this group because Ruler just decided to like push the inhibitor by himself or something like that. But Mad Lions, I think, are a really strong team. Like I think Mad Lions might be the second strongest team in this group, if not the strongest. So that's what I think.
I think they can make semis. I think Mad Lions takes this group at number 1.
Yeah, I think they're a really strong team.
No way. I'm saying no way on that one.
You think that they're inconsistent enough? I mean, here's the thing about Gen G.
What do you think they do during all these seasons? Like, have I missed something? Did Mad Lions dominate Europe or something? Is everyone else watching different games than me? Like, they win close games, and that's against regional oppositions. Like, they're still mega inexperienced, by the way. I don't give a fuck that some of them didn't do anything last World. That's irrelevant.
And also, this same Gen G roster was the one who went 5-1 last year in their group, got number 1 in their group, and then got insanely bodied 3-0 in the quarterfinals, right, by G2. So
I think they won a game, didn't they? Didn't they win one game, I think? I think it was 3-1.
I think it was 3-0.
Was it 3-0?
3-0.
Okay.
That's what I remember.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the Gen G story, though, is like be insanely consistent in best of ones and then somehow just completely shit the bed in any kind of best of 5 series that you play. So I think it's reasonable to think that potentially G2 gets out. I just think probably they hit a quarterfinals opponent and just, I mean, I'm hoping they don't get out because I really just don't want to watch any more Gen G best of 5s. That's what I don't want to watch.
Thing is, to me, it's like I actually think the way the season went makes perfect sense for Mad Lions. It's a best of 5 team. In a best of 5, they've got all these edges and advantages they can go to and weird picks and stuff. In a best of 1, I actually think like you don't get like the same type of game every time. So I could see a world where they come first, they come second, they can even come third in this group. There's a world where they lose at least one time to Team Liquid. I don't give a fuck what anyone goes, what about that? Like, we've got to stop judging the team's strength in a totally different meta on their last match. Like, that'll never make sense. You always have to look at like the fundamentals, the player matchup.
It's also the fact that for the majority of the season, Team Liquid didn't have Santorin and Alphari playing together, and now they've had a month of scrims to get that synergy back where they didn't have to worry about any kind of upcoming matches on a week-to-week basis. So if anything, I anticipate that Team Liquid should be stronger than what we saw in the playoffs. And I think this group is really hard to call because the upset potential, like LNG could easily throw a game
almost
randomly.
Yeah, everyone.
It's going to be rough.
I could see this being a tiebreaker group, dude. I mean, look, the problem is there's no team that should beat everyone guaranteed, is there? So even if, for example, Gen G beats everyone else, they could lose a game in LNG. That can happen. So then all of a sudden, what will decide whether you get out might be like a literal head-to-head tiebreaker or some weird shit of like who beats the one team that ends up going 0-3 or whatever, you know? Like there's all those weird factors.
Yeah, I think for the same reason I personally think the main reason why RNG did so well at MSI was because even though I think they were first place in regular season, they lost early in the bracket and had to like fight their way through all the rest of the top Chinese teams on their way through the playoffs. Mad Lions as well has played a lot of close series. It's not like not a Dom 1 Kia run for them in LEC where they've had some challenges, they had some struggles, they've had some really close finals, right? So for me, I think because Mad Lions have struggled so hard on their way here, it makes them stronger and it makes them better. Because Mad Lions has never had an easy road to any of the success they've had. They've never had.
I think these playoffs from Mad Lions were really dominant. Like, that's what gives me faith. And I think that just given what we know about Mad Lions and what their coaching staff has said, we came back, we were on an MSI hangover, we kind of like took it easy for a few weeks. It does explain why they were kind of worse earlier in the split, but that playoff run was very impressive.
Sure. I mean, it was very dominant, but there were some issues, right? There were some, I don't want to call it rebuilds, but some hangovers that had to be cured at the beginning of the season and stuff like that. Not to mention that their spring season was really tough. Their MSI run was tough, but also very impressive. And I think that kind of year is like the year that's going to make you the strongest team, like the scariest team that you could face out of Europe. Whereas some of the other teams just haven't looked clean in general. Like Rogue, I think is a good team, and I actually really like how they play objectives. They play very calm. They play very slow around controlling Drakes, controlling Heralds. I've actually been very impressed with how they do that.
Much more a Korean team, put it that way. They're in the vein of how Koreans like to play, for sure.
Except recently with the LCK, where everyone just face plants the Herald for no reason, even when they don't have the better fighting comp at like level 6. They don't have the they don't have the positional advantage. They're walking into a choke point against a cannon, and I'm like, what do you just farm your lanes? Like, take the L, dude.
We talked about this last episode, but I actually asked to run some stats, and Korea had the biggest difference between regular season and playoffs in terms of how fast the first Herald was taken. So it's been a region-wide priority for Korean teams, which I think is correct, but you do have to have the right comp in order to execute that play.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're also just so late, and then your bot laner, your bot Ezreal, who could have gotten an extra plate, like, walks almost all the way to mid, then your team fights without him and gets wiped, and then your Ezreal didn't get the farm either, and then you didn't get the Herald, and you're like, oh, Dom1 Kia did this? Yes, Dom1 Kia did this. It's like, oh, okay, we gotta work out our priorities a little bit there around the Drakes. I don't think Rogue is, speaking of Rogue in Group A, I don't think Rogue is gonna beat Dom1 Kia, but if there's one way you might be able to outdo Dom1 Kia, if you could do it perfectly, if you can make no mistakes, is maybe try to fight around objective control. Dom1 Kia versus FPX, I think, is going to be the best match of the group stage. Like, that's the best one matchup you're going to get in any of these groups. Very excited to see Khan versus Nuggery. That's the matchup everyone wants to see. That's who's the better top laner conversation. It doesn't actually decide that. It doesn't actually decide who's the best top laner, by the way. But
speaking of top laners on Korean teams, I think that this is probably an all-time weakest group of top laners that Korean teams have ever fielded at Worlds. Not to say that there aren't strong Korean tops at this tournament. They're just not on Korean teams, right? Like Noguri. If Khan is like the best.
You mean specifically for the Korean teams?
Yeah. Yeah, the teams that come from the LCK, the top laners are not very impressive in a meta where top lane has been very important.
Yeah,
agreed.
I agree.
I mean, Hanwha definitely does like fucking make that stat impossible to beat, but whatever. It's a whatever, isn't it? Here's one thing I'll just say, just because I like the quote to be on record, just so then it can be clipped and used in a future montage video. Just wait till somehow, I'm not claiming to know how, it will be bullshit, but just wait till somehow Cloud9 wins a best of one against FPX, everyone going to lose their damn mind. Just wait. That's my little prediction for you there. I don't know how, because I don't know how they lose the games. Never mind win them, but they do sometimes win them. Just wait, because when that result happens, everything's over then.
Or
God forbid Rogue actually outlaying Damonkia, because again, you're not prepared. You are not prepared to live in that world. And I've seen too many damn best of ones at Worlds to know this shit can happen, boys. This can happen.
Is there anybody with an opinion that Ghost and Beryl are actually going to be outlaning like Hans and Trimby? I feel like that's a pretty easy prediction to make in favor of Rogue.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know what Beryl's current form is. There were a lot of rumors that he wasn't playing solo queues, only scrimming. I don't know if those are true or not.
I saw his solo queue account the other day. He was like 9-13 in plat in Europe. Yeah, so let's just say I don't have a lot of.
That reminds me of a very quick rumor. Right? Do you remember the guy who was? It wasn't Horjin. It was the guy who technically was the sub jungler for like the GE Tigers team. I think was it Lee or something. I can't remember if I'm thinking of the same player here. There was a sub player who was a jungler.
Horjin was Lee. They were the same player.
Right, yeah, I can't remember the name of the other guy. Whoever the other guy was, right? I'm not even joking. When they came, because that was when Worlds was in Europe, that one, season 5. When they came to Europe, right, this fucking sub guy played literally in a game with a friend of mine, and I was watching this guy's PC. He was like, holy shit, I looked up the OPGG, like it is actually him. And this guy, I'm not joking, was actually garbage and got completely out jungled by like literally a guy who I know who wasn't even vaguely ever pro, by the way. And I remember just actually being like, holy, people don't realize there actually are some Koreans. It's not that they're bad, it's just that basically, if they don't play within their system, some of them actually, because they don't have all the protocols and the other person doesn't obey all the rules, some of them actually aren't as good as you think. There are occasionally players who are just a bit boosted. It happens.
This happens actually in StarCraft a lot, in Brood War, when like a Korean pro would go to like WCG or travel for a tournament and then play with like Westerners and then just would like randomly lose because they'd be like, why isn't he? They'd be like, well, why doesn't he have this stuff like right here, this timing? And then they played too defensively and lose too much control of the map because like what they perceive the opponent is doing doesn't make sense to them, and so they're a little bit confused. Like this actually does happen from time to time. And in Beryl's case, like I don't know, the guy's been a little bit off for quite some time, basically since the spring finals. I don't know how he's going to perform. I don't have a lot of faith. I don't know if I believe the solo queue rumor might not actually be his account or whatever. Who knows? But
I'm looking at it. He hasn't played it on it in 7 days. Yeah. He was plat 1, 5, and 9. He probably has a different account, but that's still sad.
Regardless of his solo queue, like what we saw from him in the even the LCK finals was like he was one of the weaker links. He has moments of brilliance where you go, oh, that's the Beryl I know. Like that's the perfect Leona engage. That's the right angle he needs to come into this fight. He's timing it perfectly. He's being aggressive. He's roaming well. And then sometimes you're like, ooh, man, everybody else in Damonkia is walking this way and you're walking in by yourself. Like there's a communication error there, or he just decided, no, I can actually turn this. Let's go. And nobody's listening. There's a lack of trust there, maybe. The laning as well, we've seen so far at MSI. I mean, it's only play-in, so we have to take it with a grain of salt. But bot 2v2s have been so important right now. We've seen so many early swings, like before the 6-minute mark even. Like we've seen level 2 fights decide games. We've seen level 4 fights decide games in the bottom lane. We've seen extremely early level 3 ganks going down there. So if you mess it up as Beryl, like that's when maybe you could lose a game to Cloud9 because you gave them too much of a lead in the bot lane. They're playing Lucian. They have that advantage. They take control of the first Herald fight because they have all that extra gold, and then suddenly you just lose the game right there. Like that can happen. It hasn't been a meta like that in a while where we have these extremely potent early game laning champions that are deciding games. And I think part of why we're seeing so much aggression is because you've got Amumu and Leona at kind of the top of the list in terms of support priority. They love to engage. They love to go in. Amumu's got 2 stuns now. He's got 2 engages. So it's really easy to want to press the button to go in. And Beryl is the type of player who goes in and comes out in the death chamber a lot of the time in those early game exchanges.
Fair enough.
Anyway,
All right,
just
so-
to set everyone up, because there is obviously a world where like Korea actually might not be that great this world's aside from down one. Like there's a world where they might not even win any of the groups. They might come out second in every group. I already know people are going to use it as a whack angle to do the old classic like, now LPL is China is way better than Korea. You're better literally be riding hard as fuck with RNG then, because if it's anyone other than RNG, I'm going to point out to you, these teams are all fucking carried by Koreans, you moron. If they had like if China tomorrow couldn't import Koreans, how sick would these teams be? Shut the fuck up. Because I hate it so much. Like, as far as I'm concerned, Korea half won worlds the last few years. You know,
Well, there's also the moment where like Dom1 Kia dominates Cloud9 as you expect in the best of one, and everyone's just like, NA is the worst,
There you
so
go.
terrible.
There you go. Yes, exactly.
And it's like,
All right.
well, I mean,
All right, Wolf, we got to get your final group's predictions here, and then we're gonna have Dylan Falco on. You ready?
Okay,
Group
yeah.
A.
Dom1 Kia FPX, pretty easy.
In that order?
Of course, he has to believe in
now
it. Come
he's asking
on.
the hard questions.
Yeah.
No, I think FPX will probably get out ahead of Dom1 Kia.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Group B, you said EDGT1.
Yeah, EDG first, T1 second. Group C is a lot harder, but if I'm gonna go all in on it, I'd probably say RNG first, Fnatic second. I think is the safest bet.
Okay.
And then Group D, I kind of want to say Mad Lions first, Gen G second. I think that's how it's gonna go. Those are my like official predictions on the spot.
These are actually
That's how
all my
far
predictions as well.
LCK has fallen so far that literally the fucking desiccated LCK homer just picked like fucking Koreans thought he'd win one group, and then he even was just like, yeah, it's fine. I guess Fnatic probably better than fucking Genjiak. Holy fucking no, was it
Hanwha.
Yes, but yeah.
And Mad Lions is
I think
better than Jenny,
yeah.
whatever. Listen, I'm just saying this is the state of the world we're in now, boys. This is the state of the world. You
Well,
have to adapt with the
that's how it
times,
is.
though. Yeah, you got to adapt with the times, you know.
All right. Well, thanks, Wolf. Have fun casting more worlds next week. I'll enjoy it. Please, by the way, push the narrative that innovation is Gumayushi's older brother, which is one of the most fun narratives that we have in esports right now. And I really hope that Riot leans into that because it's a fucking cool story, right?
Talked about it a lot on the finals for SK Telecom's or T1 rather, because they're not SK Telecom anymore. Because I've cast so many of Innovation's finals on the stage wearing that same SK Telecom T1 jersey. So it's a really fun storyline. It's sick.
All right, thanks, Wolf. We'll be back in a couple with Dylan Falco. Bye.
Bye.
All right, we're back with our next guest. It's going to be Dylan Falco. He's joining us to give us his world's predictions. Is that right? You have any exciting takes? Do you have any secret info from your European, your spanning Europe network of world spies about who is winning the most Scrimbucks right now?
I don't have any like super good leaks. I do have some like a little bit of knowledge of some scrims for some of the teams, but unfortunately I don't have too much knowledge of like the higher end teams, like the top Korean or Chinese teams. So given those are probably like the favorites to win the whole tournament, I actually don't know like how the Western teams are doing versus them. I assume it's hard. It almost always is hard, like from being at Worlds many times. It could be it's difficult, right, when you scrim those top teams, but no, I don't have any of those.
My question is this: when we had you on, I think it was this show. We had you on, and you basically said at the beginning of I think it was at the end of the regular season in LEC, we were going into playoffs, and I asked you the question, which now is obviously like the main topic that just overbears everything about Rogue. Like, do you think Rogue are chokers? Because, you know, like you look at them and a lot of people were saying it, and you said at the time that like basically you and most of the people you were talking to thought Rogue was just the best team in LEC and that actually they would go on and be good. So has that opinion changed due to playoffs? Do you actually give them like any chances in this group? Because I notice most people are just going with that narrative completely and they've absolutely written them off. Like they don't even think they can win at all in this group. So I want to get your take on that. Where you at on Rogue?
Okay, so yeah, that was my experience from scrimming against and having to prepare for Rogue on stage for most of this year in the LEC. After their playoff kind of meltdown, let's say, I did kind of learn a bit more, and apparently going into playoffs, they're actually struggling a lot for the 3 to 4 weeks going into playoffs. I actually don't think this was the case where it was purely just them choking. I don't know whether it was the patch changes or maybe there are always ups and downs like in competition. They actually were struggling a lot. So this wasn't, I think, just like, oh my god, we were still insane, the best team by far, and then we just choked on stage. I think they were actually struggling going into playoffs, and it kind of showed in their performance. I think Group A, like obviously you have to say that they're not favorites to make it out of the group, but like I think people kind of overrate the chances of them taking games. You know what I mean? Like it's wild out there. Like when you get on stage against some of these teams, like um there's just a lot of variance in best of ones, and there's a lot of pressure for the Asian teams as well as the European
For
teams.
sure.
And it's really hard to predict sometimes. Like how many times have we gone into worlds thinking that this like insane Korean or Chinese team is going to win it all, and then sometimes they just play horrible and they just like bomb out early in the tournament. So while I
Also
don't
pretty
think
rare people ever go 6-0 in any of the groups, no matter how big a
Yeah,
team they
So
are.
no, it's really like it's really true. Like in the last 5 years, I looked this up. There have been 0 6-0 teams in Worlds.
go.
It's very, very difficult even for the best teams. And
Yes.
many teams that win Worlds go 4-2 in groups, right? And then sometimes they have to play tiebreakers in order to get that first place. It's more common that that teams go 0-6 in groups, but almost always it's minor region teams, I've noticed, and usually there's only
Yes.
1 or 2 per year. And even
Thieves
then,
get credit though. I always
Yeah.
remember that, guys.
So,
Always give them their
yeah,
credit, their records.
there's
They
actually
deserve them.
there's actually only been 2 teams from major regions, of course, both from NA, and we can argue whether NA is in fact a major region. That's a legitimate complaint that we could have. But in the last 5 years, there's only 2 major region teams that have gone 0-6. One of them was TSM, which was especially embarrassing because they were a first seed, right? The other
Yes.
one was Clutch a few years ago, and they were in a group with SKT,
They were
Fnatic,
in
and
a killer
RNG.
group. Yeah, exactly.
So, you know,
Yeah.
that was a little bit more understandable.
Also from Rogue's perspective, if I want to give them like a little bit of hope, the fact that we're in a bit of a Lucian Draven meta right now, having Han Sama on
There
a
we go.
team that is playing for bot and like really loves snowballing through bot, using
True.
that bot lead to get Herald, which is like not really how the Asian teams play actually. It's more of a European thing, like the whole rogue smash bot lane, upset smash bot lane sort of stuff. I think the bot lanes on enemy teams are a bit weaker, so it at least gives them a window. Like I'm not going to say I think they're going to make it out, but like I want to say that they can take games if they play well, and I think that's what I would be looking to do if I was them.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable take. I haven't heard that before, but if you consider the kind of performance of Hans and Trimby, and even like we were just talking about with Wolf, when you look at the bot lane of Damwon, you have to favor Hans and Trimby in the Ghost Barrel matchup, especially given, like you're saying, the meta's at where it's at with the champion pool.
Like I just hope these European teams. It's really important when you're going to the World Championship to not like fall into the meta when you play against teams that are better than you, in the aspect of like you just play like the conservative matchups that they're winning against you with, like, and you try and play both sides and you just fall into it and you don't try and think like how can we be aggressive and try to gain advantages. And I think a lot of the times that these teams have these kind of worlds breakdowns, a lot of that comes from the loss of confidence and the loss of creativity from scrimming teams that are just like individually better than you, and it like can really hurt your chances a lot, I feel.
On the other side, if I did the rogue side of it, for Mad Lions, people are going the opposite way super hard, which is they think Mad Lions maybe can win Worlds, they can be like semi-finalists, maybe they can make a crazy run. So everyone actually, even though I think their group is very competitive, everyone kind of has them as like they're going to win Group D. What are your thoughts on Mad Lions?
I think Mad Lions, if I had to predict their placement in the group, I'd say they probably win. I think they will win their group, but I could totally see them going second or third. I don't think this is like I don't like put like a high like I think they're probably the most likely of all those 4 teams to win this group, but like I do not think that it is like insanely
Very
like,
hard to
guaranteed
predict
or
this
anything.
group.
Yeah, I could see them getting fourth. I could see them getting first, but I would definitely weight them more on the upper ends because I think they're good. I think if you look at the past few years, the top European teams have like routinely outperformed the lower end Asian teams, like in both group stages and in the bracket stage. And given Mad Lions won both championships, I think they played very good in important matches. And I think, like, yeah, they had this start of the summer split where they were in lockdown and had COVID and all that, but like, it's so understandable. Like, when they've had to play well, they've played very, very well. And given the history of Europe at Worlds, I have to assume that they'd be at least favorites to make it out of this group.
I want to get your take on some of the mid lane matchups in Group B, because Abadage is in that group, a player that you know intimately. He's got some very interesting, like, tough matchups, I think. Like, Arya, I think, has shown himself to be a strong player, at least individually. And then you also have Faker and Scout. So I'm really looking forward to the mid lane matchups in Group B. So how do you think Abadage is going to perform, and how do you think he suits this meta? I'm curious.
I think individually he's definitely on the level to play against people like Scout, Arya, and Faker. But I do think like the teams in NA overall are just behind. I have to imagine that they've been struggling quite a bit going into Worlds. And they've probably like had to scrim a lot of teams that are much better than them. And I do trust Abadage's individual performance, but I don't rate NA teams' chances very highly in any of the groups, to be completely honest.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I personally think the game changer, if you want to be like a 100 Thieves fan, is Closer. Because you look at some of the junglers in that group, I don't know about that. He can get the better at least 2 of those 3 for my money.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I think like mid jungle is definitely where I'd look to attack if I were them. The problem is like if you're facing a team like EDG, for example, their mid jungle I might be the best in the world, like, or close to the best in the world. So it's like they're also fighting people that are pretty stacked in these positions as well, where it's like less of like the rogue situation where there's actually a point you can attack. I feel like that doesn't exist as much in this group.
Okay.
So what are your takes on in terms of the hard predictions that you have for each of the groups? Do you have any of the European teams? You said that Mad Lions you think is the most likely to go out in first place. I agree with you. I think that their playoff run was really impressive, and I think they are going to shine in this meta. But you have Mad Lions. Do you have a thought on who's going to get out in second? I know it's tough.
The Mad Lions group is, hold on, I need to pull up the groups here. It's what, LNG and what's it
Genji
called?
and TL.
Genji, yeah, LNG and TL. I have TL going out of this group last, and then so I'm really not sure what to think about LNG. I didn't watch too much of the LPL playoffs. Like I watched the finals and like some of the higher end matches. In play-ins, I think LNG looked quite good. But it's hard to say because their playing group was so weak. So I feel like there's only one real match, and it was the HLE match, right?
Yes.
Which I thought was quite an interesting game, by the way. I think I'd probably put LNG second. I was a bit concerned with what I saw in this HLE game, and I'm a bit concerned about Korea versus China in general going into this tournament, just seeing the way they play the game. I think, like, so yeah, sorry, you asked me hard predictions. I started rambling.
I'm curious about that too, about your meta reads.
I'd put actually LNG second, but I honestly don't know. I think it could go either way. As for like the Korea stuff, it was very interesting seeing this game because Korea's problems for the last few years at Worlds, I feel like often has been like not adapting to the very fast, very aggressive draft and play style interactions. Let's put it that way. I think Korean teams have always been very conservative of what they pick and how they play the game. I know this is kind of like a meme, but like it really is true. And I feel like last year at the World Championships, the meta really evolved in a way that was kind of like perfect for Damwon with the farm jungle meta, where if you watch like what Canyon was doing at the World Championships, like he was literally just like full clear into Dragon, full clear into Herald, full clear into Dragon, full clear into Herald. It was very non-interactive, but his pathing was very smart and their drafts were very structured and reliable. And like because their players are obviously insane, they just like win the whole tournament. But I watch the way the game is played now, especially if you watch like the LPL finals, like there's so much aggressive solo lane counterpicking, and there's so much like early top dives, and like top is getting dove every game, and like um the game is just very, very aggressive and dynamic, especially more of the jungle position. And when I watch this HLE, I know it's only one game, right? But I watch this HLE game, and I see like Chovy with the a million CS, but I see they're counterpicked in both solo lanes, and one team's playing for kills, and the other team gets the first dragon, the other team gets the first herald. The Korean team, right, gets the first dragon, gets the first herald, full clearing, doing all of this, and oh my god, Chovy's up a million levels. But their draft wasn't adapted enough. Their draft was bad, and they got counterpicked in their solo lanes, and their top lane kind of got stomped. And it was like kind of like where I was wondering if this is kind of like a precursor to what we're gonna see when Korea and China faces off a lot in this tournament. So I'm not sure. We'll see.
Yeah, it's interesting too to take a look at how the draft has been playing out in terms of priorities, at least in the play-ins. I didn't check after for the play-ins like playoffs, but during the play-ins group stage, MF was picked or banned in basically every game, right? And it
Yeah.
was only banned 3 times, but in every game that MF wasn't like banned, she was either picked first on blue side or in the first rotation on red side. And what almost every team right now is doing is they're prioritizing AD support and jungle early and trying to get as many solo lane counter picks as possible. And that's basically been the only strategy that we've seen in draft, which is weird because usually you see a little bit more diversity. And I don't know if teams are playing super conservatively right now, but it has been really, really high priority on like an engaged support, MF or Lucian, Nami, and then priority junglers like Lee or Jin Zhao, basically.
So like MF or picking AD early has actually been pretty standard draft
Sure.
structure for like a year or two. I think
Yep.
it breaks sometimes because like you said, exactly like you said, it allows you to counterpick solo lanes, which I think is very important. I'm personally not on the MF hype train as much as everyone else is. Like it's powerful because it's a strong blind pick. So maybe if I was sitting there preparing for a match, I would also be picking it because it's different. Like judging a pick and actually preparing. Um, but I feel like with so many assassin junglers that are really strong, and the fact that like you can just pick Ezreal into it and build tank, uh, I'm just not sure this champ actually is the most useful in like a stage scenario where games are not like snowbally. And I assume these MFs and scrims are just going absolutely wild, right? Because like you build lethality and you just start one-shotting everybody, and it must be very impressive, especially considering you win like almost every lane. So yeah, I'll be interested to see like the MF thing and the Amumu thing, which kind of matches with it, is something that I'll be interested to track throughout the tournament. I kind of feel the MF prio will drop a little bit throughout the tournament, but still be
Yes.
played. That's my prediction because I feel like it's kind of like a noob champ as well, right? MF and Mumu, they're kind of noob champs. Like they're very easy. So for playing teams, it's a lot.
Sure.
It's true, right? Like
It does feel very safe, and like I totally agree with
yeah,
your points about picking AD early. Obviously, that's been the case for a long time. It's just unusual to see one champ picked in virtually every game, first or second rotation by every single team. Like the priority is just crazy across the board for this champion, and I do think it's because teams are playing conservatively, but there hasn't
yeah.
been a lot of variation in draft strategy that we saw at least in the play-in group stages.
But I've been there, right? Preparing at World Championships, and when you see every team is picking this champion early, it feels it's very hard to really go in at when there's like 1 million viewers and to just like do something completely different that nobody's going to
Sure.
expect, right? It takes some balls, and I just hope that like I'm pretty sure they will, because that's I think one of the strengths of European teams is they're willing to actually try and figure out, okay, if everyone's just picking MF first pick on blue side, this must be exploitable. Like, can't we just lock in Zed jungle and Ezreal and a tank top or something? I guess tank tops are kind of bad, but you know what I mean? Like, this is the way I think you should think about it, instead of just going in and being like, okay, well, let's early pick what everyone else is early picking, and then they will do the set counter, and you kind of trade.
Well, the team I want to ask about now, actually, because we haven't mentioned them much, that I feel like must be in the wheelhouse you're talking about, it's got to be Fnatic. Like, look at the players they have in their team. They even have people who are specialists on off-meta picks, potentially. Even Hillesang will just go for certain picks, whether they're in the meta or not, he just likes. Like, I feel like this is a team where people already think they have good chances in this group, but they could potentially walk into a good meta, right?
Yeah, I think so. I especially think like they're again going into playoffs. In EU, I said like they're a team that could 3-0 or 0-3 any set, and I feel like they're a team that could
Accurate.
actually win. They could go first.
They did both at the same time, right?
Yeah. I guess yeah. I feel like they could place like anywhere in their group as well. I see them as a big wild card. I like the fact that they're willing to play the game very active, which I think against, for example, a Korean team is going to be
Yes.
very, very strong because
Yes.
Upset and Hilly are going to try win bot. They're going to make active plays, and Niski's going to lock in he's basically, I would imagine, he's just only going to play roaming champs, which also is like very akin to the Chinese meta. So I think kind of in the same way where I'm liking Chinese matching into Korean teams with this World Championships from what I've seen from the regions, I like Fnatic's chances against like Korean teams as well.
Yes, I like to say that. To me, I think of all the Western teams, they have the best go button. Once they go,
Yeah.
everyone just goes, which is obviously can be quite different to some of the past Fnatic teams. You know, where it was a bit more like there was a bit of a divide in the teams.
I'm just only a bit concerned for them in their group is if their solo lanes just get like kind of a bit stomped.
Yes.
Like I think they're good players. I think they can perform for sure, but they just have really really insane solo laners they have to play against in their group.
Yes.
And that often in Europe was like something that they kind of faltered at. That was kind of their weakness, is if their solo lanes just like they want to play this active roaming style, and Adam wants to play his like very particular champion pool. And if these two things don't work out and your solo lanes are just losing, then the game gets really hard really fast. So yeah.
Yeah, I do think, especially when we're talking about the performances in the bot lane on Fnatic, it was extremely good towards the end of the season through the playoffs. Like Hylissang is just on a tear recently, so I'm very excited to see how that plays out in this group, because I feel like they can really take advantage of that and the pressure and the synergy that Hylissang has with Bwipo.
I just hope Upset gets Lucian for at least 1 or 2 games in the tournament, because I remember last time when I was coaching Upset, it was Lucian Draven meta, which I guess it is again. And the reason I call it Lucian Draven meta is because Draven counters Lucian, right? So Draven can't be picked in every game because sometimes the pick is really high risk and it can be really bad against a bunch of stuff. But like the picks usually come back kind of together. And I remember in this meta, I saw more 20 kill Lucian games in scrims than like I've ever seen in my life. Like it was just unbelievable. And unfortunately in Europe, because there were so many 20 kill Lucian games, I think it was banned against us for an entire split. But maybe like some of the teams don't know that, so
They don't
maybe
know
leave
that
it open.
exactly.
Yeah,
There you
yeah,
go.
yeah. It'll be nice.
Classic. I've got a question. Obviously, we've been mainly doing European and Western teams here, but bear in mind, I don't know how much more time we've got. I want to just ask outright, since when you related Damwon winning last year, you related it to what the meta was. Who is your actual pick for the overall winner of Worlds, and how does that relate to maybe how the meta will be?
I've said last time I was on here, I said Rogue would win LEC, so my
Hey, okay.
prediction.
You know, you can get a contract though. You can get a contract.
No, the way you do predictions is it's about the reasoning you give.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
Not being right.
Sure.
Of course. I was just joking. I think EDG will win Worlds if I had to predict the team. Probably not what a lot of people would predict.
Really? They're the reigning LPL champions. It seems
No,
like that's
but
not
I
too
noticed
far.
a lot of the other shows, Monty, everyone's angle is like FPX is supposed to be the real best team in the world. And even then, some people have RNG because of like how they were early in the year. So I actually think it's not, I haven't seen as many people say EDG outright, actually. I feel like they sometimes forget those teams. It's either Damwon or FPX for most people.
I think EDG's jungler is like the best jungler maybe at the tournament. As far as playing active and making stuff happen when I watch, at least in the finals. I'm not as like researched in LPL
Yeah, fair
as I have
enough.
sometimes, but like at least from like watching the finals and some of their games, I really really like how their mid jungle plays. Like I'm very much a fan of a very active play style where you're really like forcing plays on sides with like a lot of like really strong mid jungle combos. And I feel like not only were they playing that very well, but they also drafted very well, which I think was good. I think FPX, it really seemed like Tian was really hit and miss in the finals and in a lot of the playoffs. Like he has a lot of like random bad games, whereas like EDG, like I picture the team winning this World Championships as a team that can play very fast, that can play very active through mid jungle, that can play a lot of the assassin jungles very well, that can
Isn't that
play a lot
Tien,
of.
though, who was like popping off on Kiana and when they won Worlds a couple years ago?
It was, but like he was really just playing Lucindo. I feel like at the time. And yeah, I guess he was playing some Kiana and doing very good on it. But I think EDG is more suited to that, at least from what I've seen of both them recently. So yeah, if it's not EDG, I would say maybe FPX would win Worlds. But I think EDG is the best suited to kind of play what I envision as the best way to play the game right now. So that's why I'd give it to them.
I think that's fair. Do we get your predictions for the rest of the groups as well? Because we went through Group D, but Seems like you're pretty
Okay.
bullish on Fnatic. So Group C, you're taking Fnatic, I assume, to make it out.
Yeah, we'll go RNG and then Fnatic in that group. We'll go Mad Lions and LNG in that group, although that one I'm not quite sure on. We'll just go. Wait, it's T1 and EDG. That's the other
Yes.
group, right? I'll go
Yep.
EDG first. Obviously, I'm thinking they're going to win the tournament, so I'll put them first. And then I'll go FPX over Damwon in the first group for my full predictions.
Do you actually think, in line with all the things you've said, do you actually think Damwon themselves overrated in that sense? Because I mean, you actually had EDG and FPX as your two teams to win. Is that like Damwon's obviously just like last year, the hope of the LCK, and people have got to kind of believe they can be the best to still have any sort of like reason to believe Korea's the best. You don't. Do you see some flaws in them?
I think they can still, like, if they were to win Worlds, I would not be like super shocked or anything.
Okay.
Right? They won last year. But like they had some struggles this year, no? Like their whole roster changes stuff. Like it wasn't as clean of a year, I think, for them. And I feel like the LPL teams are coming in a bit stronger. I feel like the meta suits them a bit better. I'd probably put them as my third best team at the tournament, I would say. So like I
Yes.
definitely still think I still think they have a shot at it, but I would just put them a tier below.
By the way, I'll just say one factor no one considers here is that because it's in Europe, it's like when you have anytime you have Worlds in NA or Europe, the chance for upsets should be way higher. Because I've already seen some like logs of where like Showmaker and stuff are just milding out of control.
Oh my god, I love those logs.
Yeah, so like, listen, people don't get that. If they're playing on the like Chinese super server or the LCK or the Korean one, they're just getting normal practice. What you need is for them to be locked in a fucking steel cage deathmatch for 1 month before they play. Like, what the fuck are these guys? Like, that's brilliant. That's perfect. Exactly. Welcome to US, motherfucker.
Here's the other thing is that we talked about this on the jungle a little bit, but the thing about Korean players is that they are powered by Korean food, and there is no Korean food in the 300,000 population country of Iceland.
Yes.
I was told by a fan, like, was tweeting at Dgon and said, oh yeah, like there is like a small sort of Korean restaurant that opened recently, but it's still not great. And, you know, it really, like, as stupid as it sounds, it really does throw Korean players off to like not have their cuisine, especially for a tournament as long as Worlds. Like MSI is one thing because it's just a couple weeks, but this is a long time, especially if you're making a deeper run. And I'm sure, as usual, the Korean teams brought tons of Korean food with them, but, you know, getting fresh food might be a little bit challenging for them. I'd love to know how they are dealing with that, and the Chinese teams as well. Kind of difficult to be in a place like Iceland that I think is limited in terms of its food options for such a long period of time. Because that's
the other joke as well, Monty, is they'll obviously have Chinese takeaways, but like when the food comes, they won't recognize it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what did I order? Like, this isn't what I ordered. It's like, yeah, welcome to the West, mate. It's just grease everywhere. And sweet sauce on everything. Yeah, exactly. That isn't what you were eating home, I know. I feel bad.
So when we were in China, actually, sorry, this is going back to what you're saying about the school.
Yeah,
I find this stuff so hilarious. When we were in China playing RNG in the quarterfinals at Worlds a few years ago, we're gonna play against RNG, and Reckless queues up all day in solo queue to warm up, and every single game, everyone just started spamming on his team in chat, RNG win, and just started suiciding into turrets. They just suicided into turrets in Chinese solo queue for the entire day. Like he was not allowed to warm up for a single game. Incredible. So like when I see Showmaker,
God bless you, Chinese people.
in all caps, just typing EUS server, and all caps, just flooding the screen. It's just
there you go.
I don't think the EU players are doing exactly like that.
No. Dude, that's why people don't know. That's the extra layer people always forget about that legendary Doper story. You know, the one where he went over to China and it was whoever got to like number one on the server was at the point was going to win like 100k. People don't know this detail. On the last week or so, when he was like heading like a missile up there, everyone was just inting all the games. That's like he was Neo in the Matrix and everyone was just turning into agents around him and he was still 1v9 in all the games. Like, that guy's an actual god. Like, that's unbelievable. He could still do that, mate.
That's crazy.
If people don't know it's not a meme, they do think China number one. Just understand what that means, guys. Is there a final topic, Monty?
Yeah, I've got one last prediction for you to make. Where is Dylan Falco coaching next year, if you had to predict?
We'll have to see. I'm sorry, I can't answer that one.
I have to see how those hot tub negotiations go.
I hear the greatest hot tub is the Blue Lagoon in Iceland, which, by the way,
That's pretty sick, doesn't it?
The fact that Riot isn't doing hot tub streams in the Blue Lagoon is a damn shame. You could have set that up, Riot. You could have done it before Worlds.
Also, think of this,
have the greatest pro player hot tub stream of all time.
Also, you just get all the star players, you have them in the hot tub, you do a feature, and then whoever the MVP is, it's like the fucking beast from the Blue Lagoon, isn't it? It's like that's the that's the angle you go with, like Chovy or well, I mean, let's be real, Chovy's not with the tournament, is he? But you know what I mean? Like in theory, the best players.
I think the hype around the faker Blue Lagoon hot tub stream would be off the charts. So sure. I'm sad they didn't actually exercise that option. Well, maybe they will. Who knows? Who knows what Riot's plans are for content for Worlds? All right. Well, thanks, Dylan. We're gonna take a quick break, and we're going to chat, I guess, next with a triumphant Nymaera who will be waxing poetic about Detonation Focus me getting into groups. We'll be back in a couple.
Right, we're back. We've got Nymaera here, who technically, if you remember, we are men of our word. Monty did actually say some mad shit at the end of the last episode, where when Nymaera said there was actually a world in which, they top the group and win the group, which at the time sounded like homerism, obviously. Monty did say something like, and if they do get through the groups, then we'll have you back on the show. So we're actually mandated to. We don't have any choice. He has to be here. Like
legally obligated.
Exactly, But
look, I'm happy. I'm happy that the Dark Prince of Weebs is rejoining us. May his reign last for 1,000 years. Congratulations on being right about Detonation Focus me. NA manages to follow on their face at the finish line, as is proud American tradition in esports, in every esport ever. And so they automatically qualify. They force C9 into...
It's a big deal, though, dude. Like he said, no Japanese team had ever qualified to the groups. They won their fucking group, dude. And remember, listen, yes, they're beyond things, obviously, like something of the fucking spectre over the group. Like, we can't really know what the fuck was going on with them. But like the idea you've placed ahead of what you were essentially two of the major regions a few years ago was ridiculous. Yeah, I think that's a massive accomplishment.
Yeah, I think I can get away with just being smug for half an hour. I think I could probably just sit here and just have a shit ring. But yeah, I mean,
it's about 3 hours to be fair. But yeah, give it a go.
Yeah, it's very much in keeping with triumphant people. But I mean, I'll put my hand up and say I didn't necessarily think DFM would succeed in exactly the way that they did. Part of it kind of played into it because one of their biggest strengths is just being very versatile. And I think that we saw the difference between day 1 and days 2 and 3 in the plans of DFM was very different for the team. Day 1, they showed a tendency they sometimes did regionally where they'd play through top side and they'd stall out a bit. Even UOL actually kind of pinned them to that on their weaker showing in day 1. But then coming into day 2 and 2 and 3, it turns out they had perhaps a lot more bot-centric drafts, and of course their solo lanes definitely helped towards that too. But this is a huge result for the region. We were setting this up for so long, but it's so huge.
Yeah, it's really fun, and I was surprised by that first game that they played against Cloud9 because to me it felt like they were playing scared a lot of the time. That they were playing super passively, and that they were in their own heads more than anything. And then also that draft was a little bizarre.
Yeah,
I
had some words to say to Kazu because occasionally I chat with him on Twitter, and he's saying, "Yeah, okay, my bad. Draft was not great." I think in my eyes it was. The first day, or maybe 2 days for most of the teams in plans was figuring out what the hell do you first pick. Obviously, DFM were very emboldened by the first LeBlanc game where Ari just pops off. Everyone's quoting the stat that he's unkilled, undefeated on LeBlanc this year. He only had like 1 career loss on it. And they first picked it versus C9 when, honestly, MF was probably the best first pick to have right then. And then there's the problem of, well, DFM really can't play against Aurelia because they love to blind pick the Gnar. Actually, it's quite similar to, because obviously they've gone into Group B now. T1 have had a lot of priority on Kennen and stuff, and just saying, well, we'll take any bad matchups, come at me. DFM do that with Gnar instead, and Aurelia's like the one thing you just can't play the game into. That was kind of rough. But then, credit to them, in the tiebreaker match, they kind of found their way around the first pick problem by picking up the Leona, which then forces MF into a bit of a weird state. And they had a much better idea of how they wanted to control the draft. So, I mean, in terms of the adaptation factor, they really came out ahead, and I was very proud of them for that.
Yeah, it's also worth.
Go on. Yeah, keep going.
It's also worth noting that there was a lot made of Arya, dying
Yeah.
for the first time right on the LeBlanc.
Mm.
But what kind of flew under the radar as the games progressed was that Arya only actually died 4 times in the entire play-in stage, and 2 of those were in that one game. Udapon also only died 4 times. So the level of kind of consistency from these star carries was really quite good over the, especially considering how badly they lost that first game, which definitely swung the stats.
I think the only game I can ever remember him getting a bit gapped, actually, was in one game where he was left to last pick with 5 bans and a counter pick against him. He had to pick like a 0 into a heavy dive comp in regional. Ari's has never been a player to like collapse. He's very, very consistent. I mean, way back in like MSI when we were leading up to that event, I think one of the big things I was saying about Ari is that he was just very efficient on everything, right? Like he was doing as much damage on, I don't know, like a Seraphine that other people were doing on a Lucian and all this other stuff. He's just very good at eking out the extra part of a matchup, the part of the champion. I think he did that really well, particularly in the Orianna matchup, actually, in that tiebreaker. Obviously, Perks had a bit of an awkward Zoe game, and C9 didn't really play to their poke comp very well. I think their decision-making was not superb.
Look,
but Arya made the most of it,
Let's be honest. Detonation Focus Me, given how that game was going, probably, if you had to say it, shouldn't have won that game. They did. It does take a catch to win from a throw, though, and they did. It was a beautiful catch by them. But some of that decision making around the first attempt at Soul from C9 was simply atrocious. Should Evie have been able to nail some of these flanks on set? You could make an argument that he shouldn't have been in those positions, but he executed on those positions. So, there was I think a very good attempt at a comeback that was successful from DFM, but you do have to pin a large amount of the blame on Cloud9 just not understanding how to operate their composition.
So I'm not like into like ice skating or gymnastics and stuff. You know how like judges judge on different criteria? You've got like the difficulty and execution, all this other stuff. Like, well, all right, okay, maybe on like the early game decision making, particularly around that Herald around top side where they just kind of got a bit outplayed by Fudge taking the tower and running off into their own side of the map. Maybe you dock him a couple of points for that, but their team fighting was superb. I don't think you could take that away from them. I think that the one player who maybe people have put a magnifying glass over and said maybe they're getting a bit carried is Steel. I've been quite happy with how Steel's been performing, particularly in those team fights, particularly at that last Elder Dragon fight where, the Dragon last auto ends up killing Sven. Like, Steel gets right on top of the AD carry in a very important moment, and I feel like DFM had a level of clutch factor in some of those make or break situations which really sealed that game for them. So no, it's not a flawless game. They made some pretty bad decision making moments around, like I said, early game, mid game, up towards that Herald where C9 had the better read of them. But just as that happened, their team fights kind of stuck the landing quite well.
How would you shadow box Arya against the mids of this group? So it's obviously Abedagi from 100 Thieves, Scout from EDG, and then Faker from T1, of course.
So in terms of like individual skill, laning is definitely one of his strengths. We saw him not fall behind Showmaker at MSI. I think that was quite important, and that's a pretty good benchmark to have, right? The second game against Damwon obviously went a lot worse at MSI, where they just got absolutely wrecked by the Dian Yasuo, and I don't even remember much about that game because there wasn't much to VOD review from it. But I think that Ari is not going to be the kind of person to just collapse. I don't know, and this is going to be a big thing for DFM in this group, whether they can leave their solo lanes on an island and expect them to push in early, get some priority, and then teleport bot. And that's obviously one of the big plays which they kind of pulled out like 3 times in a row in play and stage. And that's going to be quite difficult for DFM if they've kind of had to switch away from playing through top side and actually being nullified through there by UL and the C9 the first time, then maybe not having the individual laning strength to pull off their second style, which they went to in groups, just because it's just the extra exponential level of talent growth in the group stage compared to the play-in stage. So I think what we're probably going to see is Arya do fine, but not well enough to impact the game to the level which DFM will need to like explosively win loads of games in group stage. I think there's a chance they snipe some wins, but I think they'd have to do it in exceptional circumstances, and that's why it's quite hard to kind of put DFM in the shadowboxing arena and hope that they'll land it on a consistent basis.
They also did change a lot of their focus later in groups to running through Udapon in the bot lane, and that was successful. I mean, part of having the resources invested in you is being able to carry these games, and I think Udapon did a very good job of that. And I think they've got some weird bans that are necessary. I don't think you can let Evie continue to have Urgot in the top lane.
There's no point, is there?
I think if you do that you really increase the chance that Detonation Focus Me causes an upset.
Oh, particularly if T1 do the cannon thing again, and it's just like just gets gapped in one fight.
Look, there's gonna be a trap game. I think it's very unlikely that given the performance and consistency that we saw at a DFM that they go 0-6 in this group. I think it's more likely they go 1-5. And the question is, whose tournament do they destroy? Effectively, like they're gonna be a really fun dark horse to watch.
And I think there's a chance they pull off the classic wildcard, because DFM importantly have something which pretty much no LGL team has ever had now. No expectations and like no pressure on them. Like they've done what they came here to do. They made groups. Yep. LGL's really happy with them. I'm very happy with them. Now go kick some heads in. Go do it. Go pull out some weird drafts. Do some weird shit.
I do actually think though that people, because if you remember, right, most people, when they looked at the planes, automatically went, right, it's obviously going to be Cloud9 Beyond, get out of that one. Yep. So if you remember, everyone, even though in theory we didn't know who was going to be all the groups, we sort of did, right? So in this group, everyone thought it would be Beyond, right? And even though I'll say some people were hyping that team because they were just going like, doggo. It's like, listen, motherfucker, make it more obvious you've never watched that region. He's not Uzi either, mate. Like they would talk like this guy's going to 1v9 games as an AD carry on a team you've never watched play. Like, I'd go ahead and maybe not be so strong with the opinions that people had on that. But here's the thing, right? If there had been Beyond in this group, well, it's not really that interesting. I don't think they would be able to do much against the top teams. I think Detonation and Focus Me have already shown at 2 international tournaments now. We haven't played all of one of them, obviously. They've already shown like the potential ceiling is way higher than some of these teams you'd expect. Like there are, but like you said earlier, but this is real. People can go look at this. It wasn't just that like they were winning by like 2k gold against Dan1. They had the fucking game almost won, and that was effectively supposed to be, because it was still the world champs at the time. That was supposed to be the best team in the world. They almost beat them in the best of one, guys, for real.
Kazu. Yes. No, I love Kazu, but it's with Kazu. Like, this is the player that every time three or more people... Like, this guy, like, without fail, every time there were 3 people on screen would go for an engage. Doesn't even matter what the hell's happening on the map. Like, so it made him, like, very fun player to watch, but it was very much like we just got to follow him regardless of what happens. That's how they played that game. They're a much more nuanced team with gang involved, especially when they reintegrated him. And I think the upper level of the team, as you said, is pretty scary, even for some very strong teams.
I actually hate the narratives, the fan narratives that came out of MSI, this last MSI, because I feel like it was so fucking weird, because people were focusing on Cloud9 saying like, oh, this is a huge underperformance from Cloud9 because, okay, they lost to the Oceanic team. Should that not have happened? Sure. But like Thorin's saying, Detonation Focus Me almost beat the reigning world champions and like should have won. And so people are shitting on Cloud9 for losing to DFM, which to me doesn't seem too weird. People are shitting on Cloud9, even though they beat both of the best teams at the tournaments in some of these best of ones. Was their performance inconsistent? Yes, but you saw the highs as well. Like people are just remembering the lows. So I thought the whole MSI narrative of like power level of regions and what the team's strengths were was completely off base from the fan base coming out of that tournament, and to this day still. And that's why, you know, I agreed with you when you were talking about, well, DFM has their whole roster now. That was the whole narrative going to MSI, was they were going to have it afterwards. They had, you know, you talked about the dominant split on the last show, and there should have been pretty good expectations for this team.
But this is communicating about minor regions just to the wider public, right? Because as much as like the meme about the planes or a fiesta thing, like people are not well educated on minor regions, mainly because the results just aren't there, right? I mean, it's hard to sell a team from a region which has never done anything internationally, because like the one result they had was at a Rift Rivals, and Rift Rivals doesn't really count. So trying to communicate about this team is something that obviously myself and everyone else that did the fan broadcast of the LGL has tried very hard to do. And suddenly, people want to listen to us, but it's about having that backlog and kind of saying something set in stone and say, yes, this is what we expect this team to do. These are the reasons why. Follow our logic. And luckily for MSI and for Worlds, we pretty much got it mostly bang on. And like I said, maybe there were some problems in plans for me, like saying, okay, maybe they'd win through top side being super coordinated and playing through it. Well, yeah, the top side was coordinated, but they didn't play through it. They played it towards bot side as well. It took some adaptation. We talked about their versatility, and that's another thing there. But like, if people follow the logic, the information's there. You just kind of got to go out and get it. And, you know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't always make it. Except that DFM are a pretty okay team.
I mean, my joke is you can lead a fan to an informed opinion, but you can't make him think.
True.
There you go. You like that one? Someone write that down. It's not a bad one. It should be in my book at some point.
There you go. There you go.
Because I would, by the way, just be like Frank Herbert and write my own fake quotes that are super epic as the openers to each paragraph instead of just using someone else's quotes. Just make your own quotes and then say that they're good.
As a wise man once said, "Oh, that was me." Right?
Exactly.
So as we take a look at this group, though, like obviously gonna be pretty rough. It has, 2 number 1 seeds in it from ostensibly major regions. Even though technically PSG Talon was the pool 1 team and not 100 Thieves. Some people are saying, Dylan just came off saying saying that EDG is going to be the winners of Worlds. I think that's Thorin's is a less common opinion, which surprised me, considering I would think of them as
at least among the people I talk to,
as well. But what do you think the performance of DFM looks like in this group, and what would please you to see from them?
Okay, what would please me and what I am. Okay, my prediction is for DFM is that they won 100 Thieves. Do I think they're going to be easy games? No, I don't think so, because 100 Thieves are very good in the early game. DFM have shown that they can snowball very well through an early lead, and they do have some set plays early which work very well. There are a couple which they haven't shown yet, and I'm wondering whether they're going to pull them out, because occasionally they've been able to do like level 4 roams from top to mid, or mid to top even. Their solo lanes kind of bailing each other out, or making big plays. We've seen them go bot side with their early plays, but 100 Thieves kind of running the early game takes a lot of the wind out of DFM cells to fight on even footing when it comes to the team fights, where, I mean, even against Beyond, right, when they had that huge lead, they got a little close in a couple of them even in that game. I think they will have enough in the tank to pull out 1 good win versus 100 Thieves. And you got 4 games versus T1 and EDG. They are weighted against them pretty heavily. I think that when you're looking at top side for, well, both the teams, very, very strong in a lot of ways. And the bot lanes of EDG and T1 are just disgustingly good. And what we saw in the loss to C9 was that they lost control of the map over losing bot lane pro. The support just runs across the map and just ends the game. Because Vulcan had his best game of playing against DFM, I'd say, just running across every lane. He was there for the first death of Vario and that LeBlanc, and those 2 kills mainly came from support and jungle pressure, and they kind of tied into each other. Against T1 and EDG, if you give up early bot lane prio, whether that's giving up an MF, giving up a bad lane matchup or something like that, that could be pretty rough for them. And I think that is going to weight the dice against them pretty heavily. I do think they can snipe 1 win out of those 4 games. I expect that they can potentially go 2 and 4, and then it's up to 100 Thieves to pull off some wacky shit and potentially get a 3-way tiebreaker if the other team they don't beat goes 6 and 0. That's the best case scenario, and I'd love to see it.
Which of the 2 would you pick as the one they snipe? Who's the more likely one out of EDG and T1?
T1, I think that they have made some awkward plays at very important points in the game. I think my view of T1 is that mechanically really good. Got some. I think Carrier is one of the very best supports in the world. Obviously, Faker is greatest player of all time, and he at Worlds you can never write that player off. However, when T1 have tried to go into 1-3-1 scenarios, and we saw this in their playoffs run, occasionally they do stuff like, oh, give up a random kill to a Camille. Wait, you can't do that in 1-3-1. Camille's the person that can kind of break that balance, and that's not been an isolated event. They've had some times where they can lose their direction at one point in the game and things just spiral out of control from the point where technically they should really be winning and then to a point where they have to fight back from hilarious deficits. I think that you could see that either 100 Thieves or DFM kind of taking advantage of that, particularly if T1 don't just monster the early game in the ways that they sometimes have. And that could land them in a bit of an awkward spot. So I think T1 is more likely, though I have to say EDG I'm not as well read on. And of course they are one of the pre-tournament favorites, as are all the LPL teams. But I think T1, I can see the logic as to if they were to lose, that'll be how they do it, and it's a reasonable opportunity to do so.
By the way, one thing I'll throw out there as well is I also think a reason why Detonation Focus Me has a higher chance than any past LGL team had and maybe ever will have is because if you know the way that the scrim meta works at Worlds, there will be teams, like you've already heard some of the rumors that like NA teams are losing and just not even playing the fucking scrims out. And what happens basically is on week 1 and 2, the Korean and Chinese teams let NA and EU practice against them. Then they just start filtering. They go like, you're a waste of fucking time. Say no to the scrims against him or only take it if there's no one left. Basically, I actually think if you are smart and you are the Western teams, once you eventually realise you're not going to get to scrim against FPX and down 1 every bloody scrim block, take some scrims against Detonation Focus Me. They actually have shown they can do something, and it's another team, so that you're not just only practicing like Fnatic or Mad Lions or whatever, and just tuning yourself too much to them. They got their own style.
There are two things on that. First off, DFM, since they've landed, have basically played 10 scrims a day every day. They don't care about solo queue. They're not playing it. As soon as the group draw happened, every player went to Kazu and said, all right, it's not about like strong laning. We've already got that with Korean Challenger players. We're going to lose games through like awkward macro in the mid game. That's how we're going to lose. So let's go scrim. Let's get that done. So before playing started, they had 70 scrims before they went on stage. Like they really hammered that. As soon as play-ins has ended, we've had tweets come out from every player kind of going, ow, we got a bit slammed today. The enemy bot lanes are too good, and lots of other things. So it seems like they have got themselves into. Well, I mean, obviously, it seems like it's been alluded to. Better teams. They're playing against better teams in scrims, so hopefully that means better practice and all the rest of it. But yeah, I think that DFM potentially stand a lot to learn. I think their stock value is pretty high right now when it comes to that, particularly with how versatile they are as well. I think they can show a lot of teams a lot of different things across the scrim block if they're trying to do different things as well. So I'd be interested in hearing how good a scrim experience they're getting right now. I think that is quite important. You're right.
What are your predictions for the other groups? What are your predictions for this group? Because it seems like
predictions for this one. I think it probably is going to be DG coming out top. Then there is a slim chance of a tiebreaker mess happening for Group B. The Hopium in me says DFM third and 100 Thieves kind of like don't get it together and they bomb out fourth. But I think that it's probably going to be EDG T1 in that order getting out of Group B. I think that's quite, and again, that's a lukewarm take, let's be honest. I think like the spicy part of that is that it might happen through a tiebreaker scenario, like a three-way tiebreaker. Group A, I think the spice in there is that Rogue have had a long time, I mean, much like we're talking about with Cloud9 in last episode, actually. They've had a time to take a break, go and revisit their strategies. They are an excellent best-of-one team. And there are some exploitable weaknesses in down one. Of course, their bot lane duo has been a bit awkward at times. That's where Rogue's strengths lie. You have Inspired on the team, even though there are very, very good junglers in that group. Potentially the best jungle pool in the whole tournament, even, actually comes out of Group A. There is a chance that Rogue use their strong points and come out with some strong best ones and maybe get out in second if things work out that way. That'd be my spice. I think it would be FPX and then... Screw it. Yeah, I'd say FPX and Rogue. I think actually down one might actually bomb out in groups if they lose a couple of stupid. If we get some stupid best ones. There we go. That's what you get me on here for. I got nothing to fucking lose now. I got nothing.
It's so flaming
for it.
It's like a bullshit series of crisps that people have decided to attach their identity to instead of just eating or not eating because they're horrible. There you go.
That's the one. Oh, wait, what even other? I mean, Group D. I think I am on the mad hype train a bit. I think they're really good at team fighting. I think that they understand how they want to play the game. The question is whether they've retained their identity through the patch changes. I think you're probably going to see Mad and then call it LNG. I think that one's probably a bit more lukewarm as well. Don't really have anything spicy there. Then Group C. Who's even in Group C? Oh, is that the PSG group? Is that PSG Fnatic?
Yes. RNG and then what was the other one?
I think so. RNG are obviously like pretty strong favorites there. I think that I mean it's Fnatic and best of ones as well. Adam's been playing really well. I have some faith in PSG though, I have to say. I think that they look even at MSI, I felt like maybe they weren't playing the best version of the meta, but they understood their version of the meta really well, and that's how they got to a semi-finals. I think that even when they were playing some less efficient stuff, they managed to play it pretty well. So I think that you're going to see RNG, and I'm going to back PSG. I'll be the PCS believer this time. And then other two teams in any given order. I will say this is probably the closest group stage of Worlds has ever had in the modern era. There isn't, because
I've talked about that. I don't remember one that was more competitive.
Yeah,
honestly.
And I mean, part of that is that we don't have like the top end. There are two teams that are going to smash everyone. Like, because we've had that before, like 2 or 3 teams. I think actually you've got a reasonable chance of predicting 4 to 6 teams kind of in with a shot at the title. And then we've actually, looking back through previous tournaments, it's probably the consistently best pool 4 teams we've got through too. You don't have like a Bangkok Titans Season 5 or, I don't know,
there's not a auto win.
Yeah, there's not like an absolute free win. So I think that the pool 4 kind of brings up the bottom end of a lot of these groups too. So it is hard to predict, but there you go. That's my spice and some, I don't know, some sour cream to go with it for the other groups.
By the way, all I'm going to say is this, bearing in mind that they have to at least be considered a dark horse team. Yeah. If LNG wins Worlds, They have to rehaul this fucking qualification system.
Yeah.
You cannot tell me that is a Pool 4 team and then have them win the motherfucking
They're not set
World
up for an open
Championship.
qualifier.
I know that's the problem.
They're not set up to. They're not set up to handle more teams. I mean, like I think,
Yeah.
like I said, like on the last episode, Plains is probably the best system they've got for the way that they want to run the international season. But like the way to solve this is to have like open spots and say, all right, take on all comers, see what happens. But you can't do that in the current international system. So yeah, we are kind of tied to this right now. It's just about working. You still get a fun tournament. I think Plains was really fun this year. I enjoyed it. Obviously, I'm saying that as an LGL fan. Lovely. But yeah, there's a lot more to be overhauled there.
You know, I just looked up the tiebreaker rules just so I have a chance to get
Isn't it in
super
game
mad. Yeah. So basically what will happen
It's
is
the usual one. What happens is whoever's mother's maiden name is alphabetically first.
Batman
That's the
versus
first
Superman.
condition.
No.
The second condition is if you go onto Twisted Tree Line, who actually gets the first 10 kills, nobody's
Find the
allowed to
portal in the
miss.
client, which still has 3v3 enabled.
And then third is, longest game time. So that is the usual reasonable tiebreakers, right? Money, what is it? Come on, which order is it in?
Where is she?
So here we go, guys. If there is a three-way tie, as Nymaera said, there might be for first place in this group. The first tiebreaker, and by the way, this is why having no best of one round robins is so bad in League of Legends, is because in other esports, so like Counter-Strike, you can at least have round differential, right? To break ties, like how hard a team won.
Still sucks, but true.
It does suck, but it sucks less than game time in League of Legends.
For sure.
It sucks a lot less.
Yes.
So the thing is that the three teams, they look at their matches versus each other. And if each of the teams, so if one team is 3-1, and the other team is like 2-2, and the last team is 1-3.
Just wins amongst the group, yeah.
Yeah, wins amongst the group of teams, right? Then the 3-1 team is like the end of the bracket, and the two lower teams play each other and then face the top team, which is reasonable. I think that's reasonable.
That's not
the
bad.
problem comes in if all three teams are 2-2 against each other. Then what happens is the teams with the longest average game time play each other first, and the winner of that plays the team with the shortest game time, which in a game like League of Legends, which has diverse strategies in terms of scaling, it's exactly. It's not it's not
like,
at all.
Imagine that in chess. If it was like whoever just won the quickest game, you're the best in the group. Like, well, logically, that's not even the way the game functions,
It's like, I mean, even like a team in players like Galatasaray, they sometimes struggle to close out a game, even though they were very dominant in the early game. Like, could you say that weighs against them? Okay, maybe because they're struggling to close out, you could say that. But what about a team that, like, I don't know, like way back used to play Anivia, used to play Karthus, used to play all this stuff which would like just like infinitely scale and up there and just like guarantee you the win. I think that's still a beautiful way to play League of Legends. And like, if you're going for like the 100% victory play, why can't you reward that? But it's the metric we have, so...
No, but that's the whole point, is that, again, we could just do GSL groups, just do best of threes in GSL groups. By the way, guys, the average length of a GSL group is exactly the same length of time as a double round robin best of one. So we're not even adding broadcast time. It's not costing any additional money, and we can avoid these situations entirely, right? And
also,
it doesn't even count.
Think Riot should know about that, because also GSL began in 2010, which was after they invented esports. So there's no excuse for this one. No excuse.
They're gonna have to they're gonna introduce a new national calendar. It's like AR after Riot, before Riot.
There you go.
Well, and here's the other thing, guys. They suddenly had this divine revelation. They're like the Mormon church in that, when they, even into the modern day, they sometimes, in many ways, we're not going to talk about that, but they continuously have divine revelations about how they should structure their institution. Just gradually, and usually it's after everyone else in society has come to the conclusion that this is the obvious way that people should live. Suddenly they're like, well, we're like 20 years late, guys, but God told me that double elimination brackets are fine. And so now we have those in LCS and LEC playoffs, but for some reason we can't have them at Worlds. I don't know what the reason is.
Insight and Esport is like the Lutheran church, like you're hammering the demands on the church door. Like, is that the analogy that's coming up, or?
See myself as a bit of a Luther figure in esports in some ways,
Yeah, but
see if I have the same impact in the end. Probably not.
Sparking the Reformation here.
Yeah, probably not.
But
just one cheeky Saxon getting his fucking groove on, telling them all to go suck on that. Well, wait, that wasn't really. It was a very inaccurate description of what Martin did, but I thought it was funny. There we go. How about that?
I like your version of the Martin Luther theses.
My movie would be wild. And I have Keanu Reeves as Martin
Do you have a
Luther in the movie.
director like in mind for this movie, or
Probably that guy who did like all the fucking. What was that guy? I don't know the name of the fucking guy now. I'd have to look it up. There's like a famous guy who does like super over the top action movies in America.
or Michael Bay?
No, I'm trying someone good, mate. That guy's garbage, obviously. Nah, I'd have to look it up.
That's why I was questioning it. I was
I mean,
a bit worried.
I would watch Michael Bay directs Thorin as Martin Luther.
Megan Fox is just there. That could be the Maoan self-insert.
Here's the director. The director is called Skip Woods, and he did a movie called Thursday, which is a classic. He did Swordfish, which was that whack-ass hacker movie.
Oh, God, that was terrible.
It was all like action MTV editing. And they did Hitman movie, so you know this guy's just a sell out like a motherfucker. So he'd make my principle of like, he wouldn't have any religious objection to this Martin Luther biopic, which
Also,
involves Kung Fu.
Swordfish had the most gratuitous nudity that I had like ever seen. It was just it was so arbitrary and like so there just for fan service. I was shocked that they were that bold.
That's why people need to watch this movie, because one, if you know anything about computers, to make any movie related to hacking, you have got to take incredible artistic license, otherwise it will by definition be the most boring movie ever. No one wants to watch someone on a command line going, I can't quite get what was that?
Oh shit, a typo.
You know, that doesn't exist, right? So what you have to do is you have to put in all these weird elements that would never be in a hack. So all you need to know is this, without ruining anything in the plot, this is actually very early on. At one point, to test this guy's hacking skills, they have him hack into something while being given a blowjob forcibly. If that doesn't make you right now, I won't say download, access legally this movie, then I don't know really what you're watching movies for, because that sounds fire if you ask me.
Genius. I understand why you like these films now and why you would want to be in them.
Exactly.
All right. Well, thank you, Nymaera, for joining us for this. It's been fun. I look forward to your smug tweets after we agree that DFM will inevitably upset somebody in this group at some point in time. And we're going to come back and we're going to have Laure on with her questionable Icelandic internet in just a couple minutes. All right, we're back with Laure coming in from the LEC, representing the European teams, of course. Let's start there. How are the European teams doing? What juicy rumors are you hearing from the players, Laure?
Okay, so it's just rumors, and usually we know that we're not supposed to just listen to screams and their noises, but I hear they've been doing pretty decent. I mean, I have a vlog coming tomorrow because I've been visiting the Mad Lions facilities, and Carzy told me that they've been, they got dumpstered by the Asian teams mainly, but I mean, that's predictable, right? It feels like China is the strongest looking region so far at Worlds. I hear Rogue is doing better. If we can talk about them, I know that they had some big issues, and they had the same issues throughout the whole year, actually. And it looks like they finally found some answers to that. But the issue with scrims, is that you only look at the first 15 minutes because that's what matters the most. So in this setting, I'm not really surprised to see Rogue performing because they've always been a really good early game team. And usually things go wrong in the mid game and the later stages of the game. But if they found some answers to this issue, they might actually be able to pick up some wins. And as for Fnatic, I haven't heard anything. I just know that Adam has been training the meta champions, lots of Kennen, lots of Jace, which is what you want, because when you look at the playstyle he had in the LEC, it doesn't look like he would fit to this meta. So I'm glad that he's been working on that mostly. And that's all I heard for now.
Yeah.
I want to just give you a quick warning at the beginning of this episode, right? What my expectations are. Right, here's the thing. I don't claim to be able to speak or know French very well. It was a long time ago I did it at school, but I've tuned in every now and then when you do those French broadcasts and the talk shows and stuff. And here's the thing. Even as someone who doesn't speak French, je comprends un petit peu, right? Even so, man alive, you're all biased as fuck on that. If everyone can imagine, everyone French is like praised to the rafters. They imagine a million ways that they could all win. So all I'm saying is, just bring a bit of that bias. I want to get some spicy takes on this as well. Don't hold back just because it's the international audience. We're pretending to be very civilized.
She already brought up Adam. She's going hard on Adam already. You'll notice the one player she picked out. Although it's true, Dom and I were actually looking at his solo queue account yesterday and taking a gander at what he's been playing. And you're right. He is starting to bring up those more range top laners, which I think is a very important point. Seems to be doing. I mean, it's solo queue, so what can you read into it? But at least on an individual level, seems to be doing a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. And he also tweeted about the fact that he's been fixing some of the issues he had, especially in the laning phase, because Adam in the LEC was a player who was used to take some bad trades, bad wave management, not a lot of laning control, which cost him more often than not the lanes against his opponents. So I hope that he fixed that, honestly. And yeah, if he's able to play this range matchup, especially the cannon, he might also really fit well with Fnatic's playstyle, because I mean, Adam in the LEC, he was mostly playing for his team, with people leaving him on his island, tipping mid, tipping bot to help his team. And I think you want to look at this kind of flank champions for Adam and to help Fnatic, especially if we want to. They're gonna play for bot lane for sure. I mean, there's no way they might change this playstyle. So yeah, if Adam has been training this kind of thing, I think it's gonna be really good. Plus, I mean, the kid has like a huge ego. You saw how he was, especially in the playoffs against Wander.
Oh.
He took the Yumi versus Olaf situation very personally, and even though he's been a bit disrespectful and said like, hey, I don't know who Xiao is, I don't know who's this guy, he was not very aware of the opponents he might face at World Championship. I know that more than anything, he wants to be the best. He wants to prove that he has everything to be the best. So yeah, expect some flashy plays and aggressive laning from Adam. I'm really hyped about him, even though it's his first Worlds. He's gonna give it everything for sure.
Yeah, that's the thing. I do actually like the fact he's cocky though. Like I prefer that to players who are
Right?
sort of like, oh, I'm the rookie, I'm supposed to lose. Like, of course you want to hear it, but I will say, I don't even blame him, Monty. To be fair, why would he know Xiao Hu is? Xiao Hu's been playing for like years and years and years, winning championships. Adam was born about 5 minutes ago.
Right. He wasn't even playing League when Xiao was at his prime, actually, because he
There you
was
go. Okay.
yeah, he was studying medicine back then. He became a pro player a year ago, actually. So yeah, there's
Okay.
no chance he would know all these guys for sure.
Fair play.
You know, Thorin, I realized that this year is the first year. This will have been true for you for several years, but this is the first year where now players are young enough that I have been in esports longer than they have been alive. Like the rookie players.
Oh boy.
Oh, we have one in CS:GO, mate. Where listen, I won't pat myself on the back too much, but I had some pretty good banter. There's a player in CS:GO who's a major champion. He's called Magisk. It's written Magisk, who plays for Astralis, right? And it turns out me and him have the exact same birth date, right? Obviously not the actual year. That goes out saying, hence the joke. And he tried to banter me by saying some stupid shit about like something about the two of us, right? And I just said, he didn't think this through, Monty. The obvious comeback. I was like, well, what was your fucking mum doing about 18 years ago, mate? Did you have a thing for redheads, did he? Because he's like a fucking bit of a ginger as well. It's like, you haven't thought this one through, mate. That joke can backfire on you. That joke can backfire real hard if you don't think about it. I've been around Danish Counter-Strike a long time, Vegas. I'm just saying, mate. It's been about 20 years. Exactly.
What happens?
Who knows what after parties I was at? Exactly. Yeah, I might have wandered out of a Copenhagen game sometime into a bar. Anything could happen. I wasn't always so responsible back then. But anyway, let's bring it back. Bring it back to Worlds. We're back in Worlds now. Exactly.
Yeah, but I was actually sad because when I met some of the LFL rookies this year, they knew who Faker was, obviously, because of reputation, but they never saw actually the win in 2013. They don't know about the SKT dominance. I was like, oh boy, how old am I? That's really bad.
Trust me, Laure. It gets a lot worse. You could be where I am right now. Like I said, the funny thing is like this year is very interesting for me because I started doing stuff in esports when I was about 17 in Warcraft 3. And that's when I started like managing teams and working behind the scenes and casting. And so now the players who are 17 this year are the same age that I started in esports, but I'm turning 35 in a week. So
you don't get older, you get wiser.
People don't know, because actually I get the sense, I don't know, obviously this topic never comes up, but I get the sense actually people don't realise, Laure, that you've actually been in esports a lot longer than they know, because they already know you from the LEC broadcast, obviously. But I actually went and looked up to your past. Like, you were doing journalism and stuff way before that, and in fact, because you do stuff exclusively for the French scene sometimes, there's stuff people have never seen. Like, I saw you actually interviewed Elke, the like super old school French StarCraft player. Like, you actually have a pretty long history, right?
Yeah, I started in 2013, actually. I was a writer back then, and then I got into casting and hosting with O Gaming. I know you know them pretty well, Monty. And I just write in the
party with Chips and Noir whenever I'm in France. Those guys rule.
And in Korea as well, I think, also.
We took them out.
But I mean, I arrived on the international scene in 2017, but I've been involved with everything. And I fell in love with League of Legends in 2012, so I've been around for a while.
Fair play.
Back at the start of real League of Legends.
Exactly.
We just ignore competitive history before 2012 because it was actually.
Listen, I don't want to disrespect anyone, but any era in which Skara is legitimately one of the best players in the world, all I'm saying is that's like when I see football from like 1890 or whatever, and they're like, it's like, is there any even rules? This is like everyone's just trying to kick it and running around, sort of the pitch is all muddy as fuck. It's like, you can't compare that to like the Premier League today, can you? Like, it's too far off. It's too far off.
All right, so Laure, based on your plans, do you have any preliminary thoughts on the teams that made it through from the plans, whether it's LNG, Hanwha, C9, DFM? Curious to get your takes on these teams after having gone through that entire phase so far.
I was not surprised that LNG topped their group. Honestly, they were expected to be the strongest team in the tournament. I was also not surprised to see Hanwha Life Esport perform so poorly because I feel like they haven't been really good. They have performed better than in the LCK, though, in the sense that Morgan has been playing better, Wheeler has been playing more aggressively than what we've been used to seeing in the LCK. But still, I mean, they're the shaky team I expected them to be. I don't see them getting out of groups now. The big surprise for me was Detonation Focus Me, though, because this team has been around for years now. But what made this team special in the past was the fact that they could flex some champions, make the cheesy play the Heimerdinger bot lane, this kind of champion that you don't usually see, and they could surprise teams based off that. But they've been playing a very academic League of Legends, I feel, in the playing stage. And this team evolved. And even though, I mean, they threw games and they had some questionable priorities in drafts, let's say, it was still a surprise to me that they topped their group. But I mean, yeah, C9. So, and C9 dropping games, it shouldn't be a surprise now. But yeah, I haven't been so surprised besides for Detonation Focus Me. Cloud9, though, I knew that they were in a tricky group. I actually thought that they would go out with Unicorns of Love, who didn't show anything this time around. And from what I heard, they've been doing poorly the whole year. I expect this lineup to just collapse during the offseason and try to rebuild around entirely new players because it feels like it's the end of a journey for most of them. What else?
I agree.
Yeah.
If they don't
Honestly,
do that, they really should. They really should. Like it'll be. I would like to see some sort of rebuild because it just feels like, after all these international appearances and then just changing out one position, like the ceiling has been reached, and you need to blow it up.
Yeah, we need new blood. We need some new blood, and that's the biggest surprise for me in Plains was actually Peace because they've been doing so bad in the LCO throughout the whole year with Tally swapping from top to mid, Chachi coming in at the last minute. I didn't know what to expect from him because that was the first time he played competitively since 2019 after getting knocked out by was it T1? It was T1, in Madrid. I didn't know what to expect from this team, and the fact that they had like a very poor start to the event, but quickly found their way in the group. I was really impressed from what I've seen, and I know that usually Oceania is like a region we laugh at, and we've been laughing at them in Plains for so many years, and they actually saw some interesting games. But as much as I support this Fiesta, I'm glad that we're over and we're starting the group stage, honestly.
Okay, well played.
We're all glad. Look, we were talking about this with Nymaera, but in recent memory, it does appear that this is going to be probably the most competitive group stage at Worlds that we've had in the last few years, at least. I would say it's really difficult to predict what is going to happen in probably every group but Group A, because I would be surprised if any team went 0-6 in any of these groups. So it's hard to know exactly where those upsets are going to come in and how they're going to affect the second, third seeds particularly.
I've got a question off that though, which goes like this. Obviously, like Monty alluded to there, most people think Group A is the most obvious one because it has two of the tournament favourites in, and the two teams that are the other teams of notorious for choking and or throwing the game. But with that said, you're representing Europe, remember here? You're coming in with the bias. Do you believe in Rogue? Do you think Rogue can do something?
I believe in Rogue if they fix their mid-game issues, because, I mean, that's a team that didn't progress at all throughout the whole year, and their issues have been actually worse. But I see Rogue winning because, first, it's best of one. You never know what can happen with best of ones. They can surprise teams.
It's very good in best of ones.
And they're really good at, exactly. Yeah. Don't give them a best of five, but best of ones are really good. They have very strong early game, which is something you want to look at right now. And with the way the game is played, they have a really strong bot lane. Draven is meta, which means that Hansama can pop off. I actually have high hopes for Rogue if they fix the issue they had during the whole year, because this is what cost them playoffs. But I hear it's getting better. I actually think the meta favors them in one sense, because since you can play Azir, since you can play Orianna, you can maybe lock up the mid lane and prevent Larson from getting dumpstered too much, because he's going to face the likes of Doinby and Showmaker, and I don't think it's going to be pretty, honestly. But when you look at Damwon's bot lane, I feel like it's been their weakness, right? During the whole year, they made some swaps in the LCK, finally to get Beryl and Ghost back in the lineup. And Rogue's bot lane is actually their biggest strength. When I look at FPX, also the memories I have from the team in 2019 is like LWX and Crisp were not the strongest part of the team. And I like to think of LWX as a tiny version of Ansama, in the sense that he can just throw mid games with questionable placement and end up on a side lane where he should not be, and that's usually what costs the game for FPX.
I hate
I don't like him either as a player, but that's also something Rogue could play on. So this is where I see them going. I could talk about C9, but I mean we saw them play, so I don't think the bot lane from C9 is going to be an issue at all.
I can give everyone a little piece of secret information that no one knows, though, which is this is how much I actually want to believe. I don't actually believe it. It's like I can't actually get like the filter on the Corpium to work, but I really want to believe that Rogue could be good. So I'm trying to find a way. So I already sent out, right? I do this very rarely. You can ask pro players. If I really actually do believe a pro player has like more potential than he showed, or like he's really good and he's going to potentially go against like top Asian players and think like everyone like, well, they're the best players in the world. On occasion, rarely, I will send out before a match a DM to a player and I'll basically give him the speech. What you would want on like, the fucking Miracle on Ice speech, Monty. Like, do you know every day, just today, you can win the game, like all that. And I did it, right? I've told people the story in the past. One of them that's a famous one is right before fucking Perks played against Rookie in the Shy at IG. I did send him a message that was the same shit, like, don't, like, fuck these Asian players. European mid laners are the best. You can do this, bro. Like, and then I did say he just got completely crushed 3-0. We should never talk about it ever again. But I did one of my patented ones at this, and I sent it to, I don't even mind saying, my boy Odoamne. And I basically told him, you can be the game changer, mate. You can be the one who potentially neutralizes fucking Nagori, Khan. These are the players that everyone's going to think of beyond your level. But dude, you've done it your whole career. You're always an underdog. You can always. So I gave him the pep talk. We'll see if it got through. If it does, I'm not taking credit for it. It's just a funny angle. If it doesn't, by the way, obviously just laugh at this the fact I was on the Corpium basically. Just when I hit the DM, listen. After I said, I also did think, you bloody fool, you have no chance.
I really think he can make a difference. I mean, when you look at the champions that we've seen in plane, and we know that the plane meta usually is very different from what we see in the group stage. But I mean, you have a lot of Kennen, you have some Camille. You have some Gwen, Jace, and that's champions Odoamne excels on. So
Absolutely.
to confirm that, I really think he can make the difference for the team.
I kind of hate you guys, because the thing is about Rogue is like, if we have hope for Rogue in groups, that inevitably just leads to a Rogue best of 5 in the same way that Gen G could do well in the group stage, but then I am forced to watch a horrible best of 5 performance by them, as is tradition. So while it might be exciting for Rogue or Gen G to do well in groups, it's inevitably going to lead to a kind of shitty, like ruining 2 quarterfinals matches for me. So I guess I'm not as excited about potential strong groups performances from those teams. I'd rather we just get rid of them in the group stage if possible.
You don't have to get out the group ones. What I want is the 300 moment where Odoamne launches that fucking javelin and it just paces God Emperor fucking down one game. Oh my God, he can bleed. Like, I just want that moment. I want that moment for 1 minute. That's it. 1 minute. Give me that.
But I do agree that I think probably Rogue is being a little bit underrated because of their poor playoff performance. But people don't recognize that Rogue's strengths is playing their own style, as Laure said, in the early game especially, which has improved dramatically from this year compared to last year. It's what they put their emphasis on. They basically became the opposite team that they were last year, which is a very weird thing to happen with mostly the same players. I've rarely seen that in my time in esports, but they managed to make those adjustments. Now, they lost some of what made them good before. You kind of wish they had become complete instead of just flip-flopping their strengths. But at the same time, they're good at playing a bunch of different teams in a short time frame in best of ones, doing their own thing, playing their own style, and being consistent at it. Their failing is when they have to adapt and play a longer series.
Yeah,
That's
and
not going to
also
happen in the next week.
I don't think it will, but also people keep on saying that they could have benefit from playing in the playing stage. But I feel like, as you said, Rogue is a team that they don't have lots of tricks up their sleeves, and the fact that they didn't play during the play-in means that they could keep everything for them. And second, we were supposed to have Worlds in China initially with an audience and everything, and I'm really glad that we're gonna be in our studio in Iceland, because that's gonna be really helpful for Trimby. He's a rookie. I remember in the LEC, he was very affected by the losses, and it was hard for him to mental reset between the games. So the fact that he can play like at home in a studio with no audience, with no pressure, with just Ansama guiding him, is really going to help the team, I think.
To ask you about Fnatic, right? Who obviously you have your reasons already with Adam to be interested in this team and hope they're good. But I think just the story of Fnatic is insane for this Worlds. Like, remember, they obviously made those crazy roster moves coming in the summer, which were like all or nothing moves that you either just bomb it completely by doing that, or as you saw, they actually made a run. And then even their run, people forget before the finals, like they could have lost every single one of those series. I even thought, holy shit, is Vitality going to beat them? Which would have meant they were like sixth best in Europe. Instead, they go all the way to Worlds, and then somehow this almost feels like destiny. This group is like, this looks fucking doable. The group looks like they probably are the favourite to come second off. I'd probably say second. Most people probably say RNG first. But, you know, like, unlike usually where, in fact, Fnatic famously, when they had records, they always get the super tough group, and it's borderline where they'll even get out. It looks like they can do it.
I feel like it's destiny also, the fact that they always end up with RNG in the group. And I really like the storylines here, because Reckless isn't here anymore. Uzi isn't here anymore. So it's a new generation of these both bot lanes, Gala, Ming, and Upset and Hillsang. Upset is going to play his very first Worlds also, which is really exciting. I really think it's doable, honestly. But I mean, you know Fnatic, right? They're worst enemies are themselves, and they give as much as they take, and they've been exciting to watch in the LEC. I mean, I think we're going to have spicy games in this group for sure. They're expected to come set because RNG would probably make it first with the experience that they have and how strong the LPL looks right now. But I mean, I'm excited. I'm excited for Bwipo in the jungle, because to me, he's the same player he was on top lane, making the same plays, making this, having the same aggression. He didn't change his playstyle, and I feel him playing in the jungle suits him better in one sense. He's going to help out Adam. But I don't think we're going to see a lot of changes when it comes to the way they were playing in the LEC, because they were a very bot-focused team, which is how you want to play the game right now. So this is going to favor them for sure.
If people don't know as well, that's also why I love this Fnatic lineup, actually. Even though in terms of like individual players, you could say in past years they were stronger. Obviously, they have people playing positions they haven't even played at the LEC level. But to me, the cool thing is, if you know the storyline of Upset's career, every team he's in, he is basically the ADC who really is just like, look, give me all my picks, give me all the farm, all the jungle attention, and then just peel for me in the team fight. Like, he's like the old school ADC. But as a result, I agree. It looks like he's walked into actually a meta where you can do that. It's not like Season 8, you know, where you had to play through the solo lanes, and it's like, right, you do whatever you fucking want. But this is actually a prime time for him to potentially be like one of the best players in the group, I think.
Yeah, and actually he's got 2 solo laners dedicated to him, and also, I mean, Hylissang roaming sometimes to mid lane, but I mean, when you see the champions that Niski has been playing, mostly, my main issue actually is Niski's champion pool, because he's good at Rise, he's good at TFs, he's good at this global ult champs, but when you look at the melee matchups we had right now with the Fiora, with the Tryndamere, and this kind of champions, I'm really wondering how it's going to go, because when we had the Akali meta in the LEC and all this kind of champion, of course he tried to adapt. He's not he's not as narrowed as Larson could be, maybe to some extent, but still, I'm just wondering how he will do if TF is banned, because it's one of the most banned champions right now, and how he will be able to adapt to that.
I mean, his Silas is pretty good too. So I feel like LeBlanc, Silas, TF, Rise, like he has it's kind of hard to ban him out. And I think I mean, they'll probably have to ban the Aurelia, would be my guess, depending on how practiced he is on it. But I think he has a wide enough champion pool that he can at least do things. Yeah. And I honestly think there's a world where Fnatic makes it out in first in this group. Like, I wasn't super impressed by Cryan or Xiaohu or their strength in the solo lanes. And a lot of MSI was Gala on Kai'Sa that was very impressive. And Kai'Sa's not a super meta champion right now. Gall is obviously an extremely.
He's coming
Really?
back actually with
right.
misfortune
Yeah.
being so high prio, and the fact that you can reposition with Kai'Sa's ult. I feel like it's a champion we're going to see more and more for sure.
Yeah.
You didn't know she can actually answer the questions as well as ask them. Believe it or not, guys, by the way, I know I'm going to blow your mind right now, but when you actually know what someone could answer, it helps you construct a better question. I know that's just blown everyone's mind completely, but it's true. It is true.
Yeah, so I think the solo lanes are not super strong overall on RNG, and I think with if Hylissang keeps up the form that we saw him towards the end of the season in playoffs and the synergy with Bwipo, I mean that is a way that Fnatic can win this group. I guess I'm a little lower on RNG overall. I mean, you look at the LPL playoffs; they lost to LNG in the LPL playoffs. So this isn't a team that's riding super high. People will rate them highly due to MSI performances, but that doesn't mean that they're making it out of this group in first. This group is very, very difficult to predict, and Fnatic absolutely, I think, has a shot.
It feels like the same way Mad Lions suffered from the MSI hangover. RNG had the same issues, but it doesn't feel like they recovered as much as Damwon did or Mad Lions did. So yeah, I wouldn't rate them as high as they were at MSI.
If people don't know, like they actually had like the full-on hangover where I think at one point they were like something crazy, like they lost like 7 series and won 1 or something, man. Then they did like a big turnaround, like results-wise. But yeah, obviously the LPL is so deep. That's why I think people are making the mistake by taking the MSI results too seriously. This isn't like 5 years ago where each major region had like 2 or 3 really good teams, and even if you slumped, like you're still a really good team from that region. Like the LPL, you have to literally have watched the last LPL season, otherwise like half the data is going to be mad out of date at this point in time, you know. Like Monty said, like Gala looked amazing on one champion. Like who even knows if we'll get to play at this Worlds? You know, there's a lot of really good players in LPL.
Yeah, and I mean, Xiaohu still. We talked about the solo lanes. I feel like Xiaohu may be the clutch factor for RNG because when you look at how they've been playing in the LPL, it's very early game, Herald, top side focused, and this is what could hurt Fnatic, by the way. But and they play very fast-paced games, so which is also how you want to play the game right now. And from what I heard about scrims, everything is actually decided in the first 10 minutes because of the early aggression and the early invades and everything. We'll see. That could be something that can help RNG, I think.
Also, you could make an argument that Cryan is actually the worst mid laner in this group.
Oh boy, yeah, I mean, yeah. No, but he is.
You could make that case. You could make that case.
It's not a player that I enjoy watching, honestly. I mean, we saw how it went at MSI, right? Like with Xiaohu coming back to the mid lane, just standing up, crying on the top lane with his Orianna. Like he's a sub playing on the Rift, basically. Yeah, he's maybe the weakest link of this lineup for sure.
Exactly. Xiaohu is just like the disappointed father who doesn't even explain what you did wrong. He just goes, give it here. And then he just does it himself. Like, you would go play top myself. Lane. Exactly. I'll play mid lane this game. I've got to do everything myself, haven't I? Then Ming's just the supportive mother, like, it's all right. You know he's young. Well, he'll grow out of it. It's just a phase.
So are you gonna be the bold person who picks Fnatic in first place in Group C?
I did it in my pick'em, I inted actually. I put Rogue first and then Damwon second, and Fnatic first, RNG, and then Mad Lions. But Mad Lions topping their group may actually be the realistic outcome for this group team.
That seems to be the consensus opinion from people today. I agree with you. It was. What was the story from Mad Lions from your perspective? I'm curious because there was a lot of talk about how they dialed down practice and they were trying to manage burnout. Was this something you observed that Mad Lions was doing?
We observed in performance actually because they had like a really shitty beginning of the early summer. But that's also something that Mac often said in interviews. The fact that he wanted his player to be on top form when it matters, which is the end of the split. So they actually gave up on training for the first few weeks. They had really poor results. But I mean, Armut also was saying often in interviews that he lost his passion for the game, that he didn't like the game as much. And it reflected on his performance and the fact that he was this very unstable player in the beginning of summer in the LEC. But I mean, the team ramped up. And when you look at what they've been doing in playoffs and their run in playoffs and how dominant they were in games, even though they had a really back and forth game. That's actually the style of Mad Lions, that they can navigate through multiple situations. They can play from behind, they can play when they're ahead, but they don't win out of creating really immense leads. It's just that they can adapt to any situation. But it feels like right now they're on top form. I had a chat with Mac at the beginning of the week. He told me that they actually, unlike Europe, they have 3 blocks of scrims per day, which is huge, which is what the Asian teams are doing usually during the year. So yeah, our European team are not used to that, but they adapted really good to this schedule. And yeah, I mean, I feel like they had the best group they could hope for, right? As the first European seed, and we'll see how it goes. It's they're just a very aggressive team, and I think they will come ready tomorrow for sure. And I don't want to look at the schedule actually. What's their first game? They're playing Team Liquid. Okay, yeah, okay, that's that's honestly a good start to the tournament for confidence, I think.
Okay. Monty, here's the joke, okay? It's pre-written material, but here we go. Right, you know, a few years ago, I think it was in Season 6, 2016, Riot did that change where they made EU LCS have best of twos, right? And they famously said that stupid line. They said, thing is, Europeans love ties. It turns out they only talked to Mac. That's fire. That's a fucking reference. I typed it in. It works. Everything
Very
about
nice.
that works. There you go.
Very
There you
nice.
go. That's how we do it.
You know, the schedule is pretty wild for Worlds because they're doing what, 8 best of ones.
8 games.
This is the first time I think ever in Worlds that every team is playing on a day, because usually it's 6 games. It's not 8.
Yeah.
Usually, if you remember, they do it like each day is like you all play one or whatever, or half of you play one, and the other half play one the next day. And then the second round robin is always you all play all in one day.
Group,
That was the way
yeah.
they used to do
Yeah.
it, like a mixed format, if you remember. Yeah.
Yeah, we just have 3 days actually for the first round robin. When usually when I 4. I can tell you, I was dying when you had 10 games of play-ins. No, was it
Believe it.
3 days ago? Yeah, 10 games was just too much. But yeah, I mean,
This
that's what you
is
get
crazy.
from. Yeah.
It's also because there's only 1 day off between the first and second
Yes.
round robin, and there's only 1 day. This is the day off. Thank you for joining us on your team.
Yeah, thanks.
My pleasure.
This is the 1 day that you've got between play-ins and groups.
Yeah.
So, you know, what's different about this Worlds compared to previous Worlds is just the time to adapt is virtually nothing. Like, you know, it's true that coming in with a strong game plan is always powerful, but at least in groups, you would have, you know, a week off between play-ins and groups to evaluate the meta to scrim. You'd have a week off or at least several days off between the round robins and groups so that you could do some level of adaptation. Like, it seems that like whatever teams come in tomorrow with a good idea of what the meta is going to be are going to be the teams that just do well because there's no chance to make any kind of adaptations at all.
I think it's tricky, especially for Group A, because when I look at the schedule right now, we have every team playing for the first 3 days, and then on day 4, so for the second round robin, it's actually Group A. So Group B has a day extra, Group C has another extra day. So yeah, it's just going to be Group A who has to adapt really quickly and faster than the others.
Also makes us doing this show really awkward because it has to be at super weird times. So it'll be normal after groups. We'll get back to Mondays, but we're trying to just like jam the shows in between the cracks in this schedule right now. Yeah, tough on you guys certainly there, and tough on the players as well. So good luck with that schedule. I know what it's like. It's brutal.
I mean, you had Wolf on earlier, and I do want to say that this guy, he's a hero. Valdez also is a hero because they were casting at 4 a.m. in Korea 2 days ago. So yeah, that's harsh on them because they can't be on site because Riot can't bring casters on site right now, but they also have to stay in Korea. So yeah, all the local casters, especially the ones suffering from this time zone, props on them. They've been doing an amazing job, and they're the one suffering the most from it, I feel.
Yeah, if only there was a way to know time zones in advance to avoid these problems.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert, but
There isn't one.
time zones just creep it up on you, totally random.
Listen,
but yes, they did do a good job. I
heard
watched
from
that
my
whole
mate
thing.
Zyrene, there's no way to know, Monty. There's not even a sort of technology that wakes you up or anything. Bloody, you know.
Oh boy. Don't get Laure in trouble. All
This
right.
is a callback. Almost callback.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Laure, for joining us. You have any
Thank you.
parting words, predictions, hot takes?
Hot take. I don't actually think Edward Gaming is gonna win the whole thing. I know they're
Okay.
favorites. I I would see Damwon winning again, I think. But that's maybe because I'm an LCK fangirl. I don't know.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I hope
But
they
yeah.
win, but I think it's going to be a tough road for them.
Mad Lions semifinals also. That's also what I want to see.
There we go.
Also, I can't mentally deal with Beryl as 2-time world champion. I can't.
Oh.
That's
You
not
have to understand,
acceptable.
Monty. I personally will actually, through a secret private funder, like through like a black box network, I will actually pay Theon to write an article where he ranks the best 3 players of all time as Faker, Bengi, and then Beryl number 3, and then number 4 is Wolf. And so yeah, I'll pay him to write that article. It'll be called like Shadow Semi-Boxing with God or something. You know, like.
I already have to, attempt to rewrite history. Well, not rewrite the rewriting of history. Correctly writing history about Bengi. Like, why do I have to devote my life to correctly categorizing Bengi's career?
It could be worse. Are you ready for the nightmare? You haven't thought this through. Here's the real nightmare. You have to hope, basically, Monty, that fucking RNG wins, because otherwise they're going to say LWX is the greatest ADC of all time. You can't win. No matter what happens, it's ruined. It's over, Monty.
Not that again, please.
There you go.
All right. Well, thanks, Laure. We're going to take a break. We'll be back on with Freeze from 100 Thieves in just a couple minutes. We're back with our final guest on our Worlds preview episode. It's assistant coach Freeze from 100 Thieves, repping the #1 team in North America that has no North American players and no North American coaches and no North American GM. In fact, nobody that has anything to do with 100 Thieves has anything to do with North America.
Nadeshot might watch the game. He might watch the game.
We have analyst. Analyst is NA based.
There we go. Okay.
Saved. All good. We're NA.
Freeze. You know what? Your timing. Listen, in your career, you have been cursed. Your timing is always just slightly off, right? Like, obviously, like exactly the moment you got your chance in H2K, you know, that went, joined Monty's team. You know, that less said about that one, the better. But the real one that people missed is this dude, right? When you actually, at the end of season 9, I think it was, wanted to come back and play and be an LEC level player again, was when actually, I don't know if people know this, Freeze was like the fucking MVP of the finals of the TCL, right? But what people don't know is this, is like, that's when no one gave a fuck about TCL. Now all this, it's just a pipeline constantly of talent. Like, now they go, oh, someone really good in TCL, get him in Mad Lions now. Get this guy in the fucking Schalke immediately. Nowadays,
everyone
gets something, mate. Like, you were just 1 year too early. 1 year too early as usual.
As usual, yeah.
It
was even it was even in Spain. I got MVP in Spain too, you know.
There you go. There you go. Exactly. Yeah. That was when people also didn't give a fuck about ERLs. Exactly. Like now it's all people care about. Dude, you would have been signed immediately.
It's BG. It is what it is. You know. It just happened.
So I have to ask Freeze. Were you part of some illicit hot tub operation that got your former teammate Abadage over to 100 Thieves?
I was very, very vocal about getting him on our team for summer because we did scouting. Everyone on the 100 Thieves coaching staff did scouting. I did. Yeah, but yeah, I was pushing him a little, you know. So I'm glad we got him, and we won the trophy with him. So very good, very good.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously was a huge upgrade for you guys, and certainly having those previous relationships is very helpful when a player is deciding where to go. And you know what? Schalke got their money from the buyout. Everybody's happy. He was going to be a free agent at the end of the year anyway, so seems like it all worked out for everybody involved. Is it weird for you to be coaching him when he was a former teammate of yours?
Not really. Even in TCL, it was sort of like I was the big brother or older player, where I would be like leading the reviews and doing a lot of reviews myself, and they would be like listening to me. So it sort of didn't feel that different, you know. It's a little different, but it didn't feel that different for me and for them. Yep.
I haven't heard or seen any content about this like established relationship that you guys have had, which is really weird to me because it seems like it's pretty important to the synergy of 100 Thieves and why he's so successful, because your intimate knowledge of him as a player probably helped a lot with integrating him into the new roster, right?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, Monty, they also didn't bother almost ever mentioning like Closer and Abadagi having any relationship either. Like they somehow acted like, oh, no, these two players, one came from gold to get to. I think it's a bit bigger storyline than that. You might be missing out on, with the backstop. What?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I did help a bit to integrate him into the team, right? But he grew up as a player so much over the 2 years we didn't play together that I was just so surprised. He didn't need that much help. He was a different person back then, and he's a different person now. He's more mature and adult, and he's very, very versatile player right now. So, yeah, pretty good.
And you like it when, after winning, he just, for some mad reason, decided, like, I'm in there now, I'll try trash talking. He was like, so Kodjic is fucked. And then fucking Latigas was like, whoa, holy shit. Police get them in here now. Like, fucking what? Man alive, that was crazy, dude. He tried to, like, pop it off. Listen, he almost landed it, but not quite. I thought it was pretty funny, though. Did people banter him about that? Everyone must have been loving that shit if you're in the team.
I mean, Abba has this switch in the head when suddenly sometimes he just says something and then everyone's like, what the fuck? So I was like, I didn't expect it, obviously, but he's trying to be, sort of like a outspoken or have an image for himself. And sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it works. So we'll see.
Germans learning to banter, always a good time.
Yep. Indeed.
Oh, all right. So I have to ask. So I woke up and unfortunately I looked at the League of Legends subreddit, and there's a very hot take that that LS had that NA teams are canceling scrims, which is knowing the coaching staff of the 3 teams that are there, it seems implausible to me that this is happening. So do you have any insight into this, because it does seem kind of ridiculous?
I mean, we did play a lot of so there are 2 brackets in terms of scrims at Worlds right now. We're in the other bracket, the lower bracket, what I would call, where like the best teams who scrim were like LNG, Hanwha, one scrim set versus Damwon. And then you have like all the other worst teams, not the best teams.
Yeah. The Westerners, basically.
Yeah, like Mad Lions, TL, C9. And the NA teams haven't been canceling scrims versus us, and we haven't been canceling scrims at all versus anyone. So I don't know much about that. Sort of like maybe it's happening for like when they scrim the other Asian teams.
Yes,
but it wasn't happening to us. But I can pretty much tell that everyone here at Worlds is pretty mental boom. Like we're one of the very few teams that is not mental boom right now.
Interesting. Why?
I assume they get smashed.
I guess the pressure they're getting smashed. They don't like Iceland. They don't like the weather here. That's what I heard. Like food is horrible here and stuff like that. So it all adds up into like just mental boom, and they just lose it. So it's entirely possible that it's happening to NA teams when they're playing the Asian teams, the good ones.
Here's my take, Monty. Let's just think of some of the background here. So LS is not an entirely independent actor in this regard. He literally works for T1. And who does his mate Nemesis work for? Gen G. So those 2 teams are at Worlds right now. I could imagine the information was factual. Like, for example, maybe there's a world where a Team Liquid or a Cloud9 plays like 2 games in the scrim set against Gen G. T1 gets bodied in 2 games and goes, one of us is feeling ill. Well, I think actually we're gonna have a long review session instead of game. I could believe that's happening. And then he's taken that, which is accurate, and just said like that's what he's hearing. It doesn't necessarily. Obviously, there's a 30-second clip in it. No one really knows what the full context or all it was. I could believe both things could be true. I also think as well, let's be real, even if literally 100 Thieves is cancelling all their scrims, it's almost impossible for Ace to say that right now. I'm just going to say you have to put that into the equation.
No.
I'm just saying.
I just know the mentalities of these teams, and like it just seems inconceivable with the coaching staff that all of these teams have. Like, the only team I could see maybe doing that would be Team Liquid, but Cloud9, like, they always play through. I've never heard of them like randomly.
Switch coaches talk. I mean, to be fair, Max Waldo isn't a disciple of LS, so maybe he goes like taps him on the shoulder. Fudge is like, we're only 5 minutes in. He goes, game's lost. Just go next already. He's like, you saw the draft. We lost B3.
It's over.
Yeah, exactly. We totally misdrafted that. So just cancel the game politely. We'll go next. Like,
all right. So you said something interesting.
That was a joke. So I don't know Max Waldo.
You're coming off a scrim block right now. So thank you for joining us after a long day. But you said your mental condition is very good. What is keeping 100 Thieves' mental condition pristine? Like, what are you guys doing? What's been effective when you go into these scrims, and how are you in better shape, in your opinion, than these other teams that you say are boom already?
We had a good talk about it in our mental state. That was A. B, we're underdogs in our group. We didn't get like the easiest group. Honestly, Group C and Group D is much more like easier than Group B for us, and Group A, because Group A and B for us, in our opinion, it's much more harder. So we're underdogs as well. That helps the mentality. Like, you're here to learn. You can only surprise. And then overall, we've been having really good scrims, even though, like, every single team that has been on Worlds has been scrimming for long, like 2+ weeks longer than us, because we had visa issues with Closer. Some teams, like the Asian teams, were scrimming like 4 more weeks than us, right? So that might be like, we didn't scrim that long. That might be like the mental edge as well. Like, you're not burnout, or you're not like, if you scrim for 4 weeks, triple scrim blocks every day, then you're kind of more prone to mental boom. So yeah, we've been scrimming since 26. Yeah, 27. So about like 13 days, which is honestly not much, and I wish we would be able to scrim more. Because I feel like we're like 70, let's say tops like 70-80% of what we were at playoffs in NA, and we 3-0 TL and 3-1 C9. And finally, we've been scrimming the NA teams again and the EU teams, and okay, NA is doomed. I just have to say, NA is doomed, because there's no way that we, like, us with 13 days of scrims and playing this way, can just have no issues versus everyone else in NA. So,
Yikes.
Yeah. Yikes.
I mean, I would expect you, obviously being the reigning #1 seed, the champions of LCS, to be doing better than the other NA teams. So that's not that's expected. I'm curious for you guys, what happened between the time that 100 Thieves was at the end of the season, where you guys were looking a little bit weaker, and then you come in and you kind of just run through everybody in playoffs. People, including myself, may have expected like EG to take that first win against you guys because they were coming in a little bit hotter. What did you do between the end of the season and the start of your playoffs that really improved the team, and how did you fix it to get to such a relatively easy victory?
Yeah, so at the end of before playoffs, at the end of the regular split or the season, we were basically really fucking bad. Like, we were shit. And EG was pretty good. They were on the up price, and we got lucky, I would say, to have the option that we won best of 5 versus them, and have 11 days of just practice. And in those 11 days, I have to say that me and Reaper, I felt like we did incredible job with the team, where we would be watching a lot of clips. We would be teaching the players what is wrong. We had very good understanding of what is wrong with us as a team and what needs to be fixed. And that was, like, our macro and team fighting. And both of the topics were we fixed them to a degree where it gave us another time that we would win the next best of 5, and we would have another 1 day that actually, like, when we won versus C9, we would still not be playing as well as we were hoping to, but then we would go back to the office, spend 3 hours in the office after C9, talk about the game, show the players like what is wrong, what needs to be fixed, and then the next day the team played insanely well, like incredible well. Everything we wanted from them and what we were trying to teach them, they were able to do, and that showed in 3-0 versus TL and just giga stomp, So
in a world, because you alluded to it there in your answer, in a world where EG wins the 5th game of that upper bracket match and you go straight to the lower bracket and you start playing all those teams, it might have been a different qualification. Maybe you don't make it, or it would have been 3rd, or what do you think?
I believe so. It is my opinion though, but I do believe so. That it will be completely different for us. Since we wouldn't have that much time to scrim and focus on ourselves. Because we would have to focus on like others, sort of. But who knows? Who knows what would happen?
Yeah, of course.
And then the players learning super fast was very nice to have. Very good rosters for that.
One player I want to ask you about, because he's obviously literally your position classically, the ADC. This year especially, I think has been the true breakout for FBI, because people knew he had like some potential way back, like years and years ago, when Golden Guardians like subbed him in every now and then instead of Deathly. I don't know why the fuck that was ever a rivalry, but whatever. Then obviously last year they had like the good team, but some of the players around them weren't necessarily quite good enough. Still almost did dumps to TSM 2 times. That would have been hilarious. But this year especially, like, dude, I thought personally he should have been like an MVP candidate. I thought he looked like a fucking banger for most of the summer. What do you think about this guy playing the ADC role?
Fake FBI is honestly I have to say he's stupid, but in a good way, where he's an like sort of like an animal instinct guy, where he has such a good understanding and instincts about his role and how to play the game, that he knows very well what to do, and he knows his limits very well. But funnily, I see myself in him when I was younger, right? And we butt heads a lot. Yeah, we butt heads a lot because he was the same way I was. Just like he has to get burned to learn.
Right.
So sort of like it's very funny working with FBI, I have to say. But he's really good, and I knew that before already. And this year, as you said, he had the chance to prove that he's the best in NA.
You know something, Monty, is a quick sidebar. I normally don't reveal personal details, but this is so obscure that it wouldn't have any relevance. I actually was the kid, no joke, where when your relatives go like, don't touch that, it's hot, I'll be like, is it though? No, that was me. Don't worry, that was me.
That is the least shocking revelation about your childhood that I have ever
exactly.
heard.
It's not really like a crazy contrast, is it, at all?
Some may say you just replaced hot pans with Twitter, and you're like, is this hot?
Exactly. The joke is, I figure out if the tweet was out of pocket by the response after tweeting it. I can't know before. I'm not fucking miracle worker, guys.
Too good. All right. So you say you have this tough group. Your first game is up against EDG. EDG may be the favorite for this whole event. How are you guys approaching this group in these matches? Because, I think there's not a 0% chance you make it out of this group, right? T1 didn't look amazing over the course of LCK playoffs or in the gauntlet, like pretty shaky, kind of won 3-2 in a dirty series against Hanwha. So it doesn't seem completely implausible that you could take a second seed out of this group.
I mean, it could happen, right? Let's be real though. For us to make it out of the groups, we have to do 0 DFM. You can't lose a single game versus them.
Yes.
And then we have to basically steal the games from EDG and SKT. I have no clue about EDG, how we will face versus them. But I believe that versus SKT we can win. So like it's BO1. Anything can happen. We could take the game from SKT, and then if we 2-0 DFM, then who knows what's gonna happen, right? Maybe there's gonna be tiebreaker and it'll be spicy, but we'll have to see.
I feel like coming out of LCK, though, this is the question I have about T1 in your group, which is, I feel like a lot of the LCK people, like a lot of their belief about T1 was just the idea if they put the right roster together, and if only the good games counted and you don't count the bad games in LCK. And obviously they did make the run to the final, so I feel like people just built their idea that T1 was a big team. I feel like a lot of people who were just the general world analysts actually don't think T1's that good. It seems like you're kind of putting them as stronger than you, right?
Yeah, I'd say they're stronger than us, but it's given that we like the amount of scrims we had is such. We had like 13 days of scrims, and out of those 2 days were like either cancel or riot, like whatever, like videos. So we don't really have that much data.
Right. Okay.
We'll be behind on meta, so we'll have to adapt. We'll have to see the first day when everyone plays, and then we'll have to quickly adapt. Right? We will have only like 2 days to adapt before we play all of our games at the same day. And like we're not in the spot where I would dare to say we're better than T1.
Okay.
No way, because we're not even playing as good as we were playing in playoffs in NA playoffs. So, yeah.
Just because you were late on the scrims, or are you uncomfortable with the meta comparatively?
We haven't scrimmed after finals. We haven't scrimmed for like a month. Given that we took an 11 days break, and then we went to Berlin, but Closer didn't get visa in time, so we were basically only playing solo queue in Berlin in Misfits Gaming House, and then we finally started scrimming in Iceland. So yeah, I would say that's like the main reasons.
I think I've nailed the difference in mentality, Monty. Like, as you saw, young Adam coming in, he's only played one bloody split. He's been in the finals one time of playoffs ever. He's coming into Worlds and he's going, who's Zhao who? I'm Adam. NA goes, dude, that's Faker. And then the vein on the neck just goes fucking... That's the difference in mentality between the regions right there. There you go.
Freeze, like... When you look at this, though, when you look at the meta, it seems to me to be favorable towards you guys because so much has been about the early game, and that's been 100 Thieves' overwhelming strength this year. So at the very least, even if you haven't had the most time to scrim, it feels like the world's meta is playing into your wheelhouse more or less. Like the bot lane is more important than perhaps it was previously. I wouldn't say that some days playstyle is necessarily ideal, but at least in play-ins, we've seen teams like play weak side top and win a lot of games. So it's not necessary potentially for him to have to carry the whole roster. Are you guys feeling comfortable in the meta overall as a result of this?
Yeah, I mean, overall the meta is pretty good for us. Like the way the game is being played right now at Worlds. Given that we've been always good at early game, we were not having issues even versus like the better teams in terms of skill level. So for example, like we would be scoring down one, and we would be every single early game we would be ahead. We would be like 2k gold ahead, but then mid game would come in and we would just lose, eventually. So that kind of like plays into our hands, and that the players are skilled enough to match even the best. I feel it's pretty good for us, but given that our mid game is nowhere where it used to be, and it wasn't even good to start with, right? Then that might be an issue for us in the groups games. So we'll see.
Closer must be loving this, right? Like he's gonna pop off on all. This is Closer's time to shine. He must be so happy about all these like assassin junglers and getting these huge leads into the early and mid game, right? Is this his favorite meta ever? He must be having a great time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Closer has been always having a good time, like throughout this season. Like the season was basically like his season to play, where everything kind of like worked into his favor, and he's a very good player, and he put a lot of work in to be like the best. So, yeah.
What I want to ask was this: as a coach, right? You're not the player, so you can't know what the form will be like and all the rest. What do you think the expectations for 100 Thieves should be? Because even though you said Group A and Group B are the really hard ones, a lot of people, like I say, for example, a lot of people don't necessarily have ADG win the tournament. A lot of people think T1 maybe they're going to be weaker than possibly in the past. Some people might not even know DFMR, so they might think that is an easy 2-0. What are your expectations? Like, should we actually expect 100 Thieves is going to be a playoff team?
I mean, if I look at it real, then we would be third in the group, right? If I had no say whatsoever. Yeah. But what I would kind of expect is the games to be, like we're not coming here to get stomped. We're coming here to win the groups. That's our mentality, even though the group is very hard. So I feel like the games could be close, in versus everyone in our group. So that's what I would kind of like expect from us.
So when we look at the other groups, obviously we don't want you to leak anything given the scrims that you've had, but how would you predict some of these other groups? Most people think Group A is pretty clear cut in terms of Dom1 and FPX. Do you agree?
Yeah, Dom1, FPX, Rogue, and Cloud9. That's the order for Group A, I'd say.
You think Dom1 over FPX?
Yeah. Actually, no, FPX over Dom1, actually, when I think about it.
So
yeah, FPX over Dom1.
Group C and D are like a lot harder to decide because these groups seem to be highly competitive. So do you have any
They are indeed.
takes on who's going to make it out of Group C and D?
Okay, Group C, I'd say Royal is going to be first, and then Hanwha is going to be second, Fnatic third, and PSG fourth. That's
you
what
don't believe in Fnatic?
They can, yeah, like they have a high chance of making it, but I would say no. I'd say no.
Also, by the way, bold prediction. Did you have Hanwha fourth?
No, PSG.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I was going to say even so that could even happen though. Like, and by the way, if an LCKC finishes bottom of the group, wait for the meltdown. But they'll probably be disowned from the country and told not have to come back as we're mad. Chovy will actually be forced to join the LPL at that point in time. Won't even have a choice in it, will you?
Yeah.
Okay, what about D?
Group D. I would honestly put Mad Lions first in Group D. And then second would be second would be Genji, third would be LNG, and fourth Liquid. That's what I would say.
That would be my
you don't have high hopes for Liquid then. Is Liquid got any chances? You're not feeling them?
No. He just laughs. No, that's an ominous sign for North America people.
The thing is, I had hope for them, but that hope is not hope anymore. Yeah.
What about in Group A? Do you actually think Cloud9 gets an upset?
I mean, Cloud9 could possibly beat Rogue, but they will not beat FPX or Dom1, no.
Okay.
I'm surprised about Team Liquid because I had hoped that now that they had like a month off to scrim and practice with Alphari and Santorin together, that maybe they might be a little bit stronger. But you're crushing the dreams right now.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
they're just going. Team Liquid's just going into a cold, shallow grave in Iceland. Is that what you're saying? Fourth place, just straight back to North America.
Yeah. Sadly, I would really like to believe in them because I felt like they could make it out of the Group D. But yeah. That's all I'll say.
I'm going to give you a prediction. I won't say where the teams actually finish. Like I'd have to go through the whole scenario. But I'm going to say right now, I think there's a world where Team Liquid can upset Gen G and Mad Lions. Mad Lions just because look at their playing style. And then secondly, for Gen G, listen, I don't give a fuck what any of y'all think. I think Alphari's better than fucking Gen G's top lane. I think that top lane for Gen G has always been mad overrated.
He's terrible.
Like, listen, I know what his job is within the team, but Alphari can beat this guy. I'm telling you. I'm riding with. Well, I won't say my boy because it makes it sound like I got Jack kicked out just intentionally, but that was legit journalism. That was real.
I think at least what is exciting about Group D is the Alphari Ale matchup. Is I think extremely compelling. I'm looking forward to that. Rascal is certainly not on the level of either of those other two top laners, and has I think consistently been the weakness for Gen G outside of their horrific play style.
The joke is, I mean, it's not entirely true. Like, if you ever go and look at LCK, it's actually like just bizarrely some of the better top laners are just in like sort of the teams that don't make the playoffs for some fucked up reason because how weird GMing works over there. But I actually think that's literally the one position you have to start talking about in LCK. Like, yes, the teams stylistically play different. Yes, LPL's risen up. Dude, where are all the top laners? I mean, I know where they are. They're in the bloody LPL. But like, the joke is, like, top lane used to be the role in Korea. That was the shit. That's why it literally, T1 almost won 3 worlds in a row or something like that by just changing the top laner every year, because it was literally like, right, who wants to join next? Like, my boy Flame was even in the fucking mix 2 times. Just didn't get the job. Like, the idea now, like, look at this crop of top laners we're sending. Bloody hell. Dude, Khan is the best of them. You can't even talk shit. Like, of the Korean teams, he is far and away the best. Like,
well, that's because good players are just inexplicably trapped in garbage teams, like 1v9ing every single game. Yep. So I guess that's just the world we live in, is we just can't make the Korean top teams good. Like, the fact that there wasn't any kind of backup to Beryl or Ghost on this roster, or that Damwon couldn't acquire these players or a better player at least to have as a bench player and challenge Beryl halfway through the season is ridiculous. Like, these teams don't make mid-season moves. And as we've discussed on the show before, as you know, Freeze, you just made an excellent mid-season move. Yes. The way League of Legends works now is that it's impossible to know in the offseason what the effects of the massive changes Riot makes are going to be on the professional scene. You don't know how the meta is going to shape up when everything changes every offseason, although it does seem to be changing less this offseason than most offseasons. Still need to put the Drakes in the order they spawn in Champ Select. For the love of God, Riot, please do that. You can't add 2 more kinds of Drakes and then keep it so no one knows what the spawn order is before the game starts. That is a bullshit way to play this game professionally. Thank you.
Also, just to diss him, because I actually don't think that player is good. That's why I even just call him the Gen G top laner, because that way, if none of you watch LCK, you won't even know who the fuck it is. Here's the other banter I would have gone with, but only Monty would appreciate it. I don't even think he's the best Korean fucking pro player called Rascal. That's a deep cut.
That is
not bad though. It's borderline. It's a bit borderline, but whatever. It works for the joke.
So anyway, I wish that teams would make more mid-season moves, because it seems like especially as Riot is kind of deprioritizing the spring split, you get a lot of data about what needs to be done, and teams that make strong mid-season moves like 100 Thieves are the ones that are going to see it, because they actually know what they need at that point in time, because the meta isn't going to take a massive shift in the same way it does in between seasons. Also makes it very hard to GM League of Legends teams. Very hard. So there you go.
There you go.
Do you have any? I know you're thinking about other things, Freeze, but before you go, do you have any interesting
I've got
takes?
a quick question. It's a mean question. It's actually slightly hurtful, and it opens up old wounds about your life, so sit back and enjoy. Here's the question, Freeze. Is when I was told you were part of this coaching staff they're bringing in, they've got Reaper, you're coming in as well, all the rest of it, right? All I was thinking about was this, dude. When I saw the way 100 Thieves works, no one will know the reference to know why I've come with this as well, right? When I saw 100 Thieves' problem is, sometimes the early game goes well, sometimes they lane well, but you get to this mid-game point, right, and then no one knows what to do. Remember that team, NIP, you and fucking Nuke Duck were in, mate, where every single promotion game was like 50 minutes in, like, shit, what do we do? I'm fed, but what? Like, mate, come on, you gotta get that, you gotta get this fixed, otherwise it sounds like it's you, mate. Come on.
I got me. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Flashbacks here. I'm getting flashbacks.
Oh, yeah. You got me there. Oh, my God. Whew. Yeah, that happened a lot to us, and it's been happening to us as well. It might be me, actually. What do I do?
Here's the other angle people don't know, dude. Remember, literally, Monty, we were trying to get Zoro Zero to come to NA, and he wouldn't come, right? He obviously just retired. Every other fucking member of the lineup went over. It's like Mithy, fucking Nuke. I guess Nuke Dog didn't technically. Dexter, back in the day from the 11. Every fucker was going over from that team. Give me a break. Even Freeze. But again, we don't talk about that. That never happened. There was that one Draven game against TSL. That was pretty cool. I can't lie. I only watch the first 10 minutes, then turn it off and just assume they win. After that, it gets a bit depressing. I can't lie. That was the definition of 1v9, by the way, Freeze. A lot of people overuse that term. That game was the definition of 1v9. And guess what? The one loses most of the time when it's 1v9. Let's be real. Exactly. I've got a question then. If 100 Thieves was to make a playoff run, was to upset a bunch of people, which player do you think we have to see the big performance from? Who's the guy that this guy could make it happen? Who are you picking?
Closer. Jungle is OP. Yep.
Okay. Listen, in that group, I think it's not impossible. I think he's got some decent players he's going into there, but he has a chance to do something, especially because, just compared to those particular players, I think he's going to be mad aggressive. I hope he is, at least. I hope he's just going all in.
Yep. We'll see.
There we go. All right, well, we'll let you go, Freeze.
As ever at the end.
Thanks for joining us. Good luck tomorrow
Thank
in your
you.
game versus EDG. Appreciate you taking the time on a day full of scrims. I hope they went well.
Yeah, 10
and
minutes.
you get the big upset.
Scrim block, So, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Gotta go.
I'll catch you later. We'll be back in just a couple minutes with viewer questions. Hooray.
Yes.
Now is the time where we are here to answer your Grogcoin questions. Join the Summoning Insight and Insight on Esports Discord, which will be linked below. And you can find some instructions in the Grogcoin Lounge. And if you have 25 coins, then we will answer your questions that are put in the weekly show channel. So there you go. First question, as we do a League of Legends show, how many more years until League is no longer a top-tier esport? Well, I would have predicted that it already would be the case.
It should already have been on fumes, right? Logically. Yeah.
It depends, I think, is the answer. I think there are a lot of factors for League right now. First off, we have seen increasing viewership in Europe, declining viewership in North America over the last few years. Chinese viewership has obviously been good, as has Korean viewership, but esports in Korea have tended to last a long time. And then in China, as many of you are aware, games are not being released in China and haven't been for like 2 years now. So there really isn't any way to replace it. It's obviously hugely popular there as well. So it's had longevity, which is a good thing for, I think, esports in general, to have games that last a long time, that can have deep and rich histories. I always like that. And I think the other thing that helped is that the dominant genre that came after MOBAs, which was Battle Royale, translated very badly to esports.
Yeah.
So until there is a new genre of video game that is very good for viewership and for esports competition, I think like MOBA and FPS are still going to, or TAC FPS, I should say, are still going to continue to dominate. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a few factors. One, it's a term people might not be aware of by the famous economist / philosopher Nicholas Nassim Taleb, where he has this term he uses called Lindy. And it's the principle that if something has been around a long, long, long time, essentially, it has some quality where you can kind of gamble it'll be around much longer as well. Like something, obviously, some essential component of it just keys into something or just is effective, works in some way that maybe you don't even understand. I think basically, like Monty said, if this was 2015 and you asked me, I'd have said, it could maybe get like 3 or 4 more years if things go well. Now it's not only made it to that point. In some ways, look, viewership in is dying. But aside from that, certain aspects even take an upturn. Like you could actually say in some ways, it's even a better game to watch now and the scene's more developed. So I think it's sort of already past the threshold where as long as there's not some crazy, funny enough, his own term, black swan event that comes out of nowhere and destroys everything, which, by the way, actually some of the Chinese government-related stuff could well be, but we don't know enough about that for now. Beyond something like that, it looks like, quite frankly, even if it wasn't the biggest esports game, in 3 or 4 years, it should still be in the mix. It should still be a top 3, top 4 game. And you see if the way the scene's going, lots of investment still coming in. If anything, LEC's expanding, growing. If you can make that much for a slot, I could see a lot more investment coming in. Top ERL teams logically will then be invested in more. Like I could see, this is almost like a second renaissance period where it can blow the game out a little bit longer. So to me, there's that factor. Like I already feel like it's established, and the people who play League have a similar quality to the people who play Counter-Strike. You're just a League player. You're not really a general esports player. You don't sit down and go, what's hot this week? What's on the... Because if you were, like Monty said, you'd have fucked off and played Fortnite, or you'd have tried to, maybe you'd be playing Valorant right now. I get the vibe that people who play League of Legends are kind of like the CS fans. They just play League. That's their game. Now listen, they'll bitch about what the new patch is and what's coming next, but that's because they're locked in. You've also put in so many years, you don't want to just throw away 6
Yes.
years of being a shit Teemo player. For some reason, you want to keep doing it, like we all do for some mad reason. You can't quit the game. Half the complaints on the Reddit are basically like, it sounds like people at fucking AA, they're like, look, I hate it, it's ruining my life, but I can't stop playing. Like, that's half the complaints. Then I'd just throw this in. I also think what usually kills an esports game is another massive one, like Monty says, the new genre takes over, the number one game steals all the attention, and as Monty says, the last few times that's happened, it's been games that sort of didn't impact esports. It was more the general casual audience or just streaming that it impacted. So at the moment, there's not really someone coming along to kill League. There's not a game I can think of. Like, again, games like CS don't really overlap much. Valorant feels like it's its own thing. It's almost
Just
like an
an NA.
overlap of the two communities, but with not much more. Exactly, we don't know how much the Asians will be involved. So at the moment, I mean, I can't see what the next game would be. And then the last thing I would say would be, I actually think, in general, as much as I don't like how drastic the patches are in League, I almost think to have a very casual base and a pro base, even though I think the pro base will always suffer from these drastic changes, in a way it does keep actually the game fresh for the plebs, I think.
Yep.
I actually think in a mad way they do like the idea that, like, oh shit, it's Misfortune OP now, and then they all just rush and buy a skin and then fucking spam it for a month. I almost think plebs do want that, mate.
I think also it's you either, in terms of esports, I'm coming around to the opinion that you either have to drastically change the game like League does, or you just don't change the game
Not
at
at all, basically. Yes, exactly. It's got to be one of the two, sadly, even though, by the way, they're both the least reasonable position to take. The obvious reasonable position is to slightly tweak it and just get it really nice. But we know that doesn't exist, that sort of thing.
But like slightly tweaking it, I feel like if you're a player, and as you say, like, there's kind of a sunk cost fallacy with esports games where it's like, well, I've been playing this game for so long, I don't want to have to learn a new game. And the other punishing thing as somebody who's been through many cycles of esports is learning new mechanics. Like, for example, I really enjoy Counter-Strike, obviously, but I just am never going to be a good FPS player because I grew up playing FPS on console on Halo. And when Counter-Strike was starting out, I was playing RTS. And like the daunting factor for me of like learning PC FPS mechanics, I just can't do it. I'm 35 this year. Like it's not going to happen, right? Like RTS and MOBAs are the games that my hands can play at this point in time. So it's a little tough to justify all that investment in a new genre of game. And I think especially as people get older, they want to still be competitive and have a good time playing games, but learning an entirely new set of mechanics is very difficult. And the other thing that's happened with esports is that it's been dictated by the technology. So, for example, RTS was very popular because back in the day, internet connections weren't stable. And if you played, if you played Warcraft 3 Dota, half your games would have some sort of DC or lever. There was, it was a really unpleasant experience for the most part, very inconsistent. When it was fun, it was, when everybody was there, it was great. But RTS grew because 1v1 games, if you DC'd, you either won or lost, and it wasn't that annoying, right? You could just go into the next game. Without it having your time wasted or your experience ruined. So the thing is that the expansion of internet and technology allowed 100 people to be in a BR game at the same time. And I love playing BR games. Like I enjoy playing Apex Legends quite a bit. But the thing is that those kind of games make it for a very unsatisfying viewer experience. So I feel like we need a new leap in technology to unlock a new genre, and I have no fucking clue what that's going to be. But until that happens, and the kind of confluence of technology and watchability happens again, it's going to be tough. Because at the end of the day, Valorant is popular, but only in NA, and
seems to have limited appeal.
It's popular really in like one region. And it's doing well in that region, but it's also not. It's fundamentally Counter-Strike when it comes to viewability, right? Except worse, I would argue. But anyway, classic butt pounder 420, tits or ass. I appreciate all aspects. Why should I have to choose? You can.
I'll even say as well. Like, obviously, the idea that there's a right answer is just like objectively stupid. And I'm so glad that actual clown, who, by the way, this is the state of this League of Legends subreddit. I believe the guy who famously, Monty, in every AMA asked that later became a fucking mod of the subreddit, because that's the sort of clown world level we exist within. Where, that's right, a gimmick account became a fucking mod. By the way, biologically, you should just delete all gimmick accounts anyway and just they're literally wasting everyone's time. But obviously, back in the day, they used to go, by the way, if you remember the way it went, right, you'd go tits or ass. And whatever you said, Monty, it didn't matter. You'd just go, my man. Like, this is so whack. This is so whack. But anyway, Yeah, I'll answer the question seriously, like we do on this show. It's this. I used to think, everyone knows Claylove, I used to be all about the tits, didn't I? I used to be about the big, weighty melons, sinking, whatever. Listen, you don't need to know what I do. Never you fucking mind. That may even knowledge being a bluff. But no, it definitely wasn't. That definitely was me back in 2015 in Korea, right? But anyway, I used to think tits were the superior one, but then I learned, you know what? This is wisdom only an older man can actually appreciate, which is it depends exactly on the type of woman. Because here's the thing, what you learn is there's not really even one thing you like the most. Like, for example, if someone has a very sporty physique, small tits and small ass can be amazing. Sometimes that fits better. Sometimes it actually looks really out of place when someone has the stacked top and then the tiny. Aesthetic. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Aesthetics is what it's all about, basically. So I'd say it's more if it fits the form. I think all types can be lovely in that sense.
I agree with you, Thorin. I appreciate many different things. It's about the whole picture. That's the sophisticated man's take. All right. Or woman, if you're into that. I don't care. Let's see here. I'm intrigued by the storytelling aspect of World's music videos. Me too. I actually really enjoy that. Incidentally, how would you go about writing a script for an anime about LoL esports? What would you portray? Player narratives, coaching, GMing, orgs business, industry fuckery, all of the above. Like, what would you focus on for a League of Legends anime?
Here's the thing. First of all, I would just say this. One thing I would do, and this is why I would love to work on a project like this, is I've always thought this is the part that people didn't get, Monty. Right? You know, one of the problems with doing like a sports biopic of like the obvious stories you do, like, you know, the Shaq versus Kobe Lakers, is you're going to have to get the rights and you're going to have to get the right act. No, what you should do, the logical thing is make a fictional movie, and then obviously that's Shaq, but it's not called Shaq in the movie, and obviously that's Kobe, and you just essentially can tell the unofficial story, and in doing so, by the way, because you're not using their real names, you can take liberties, you can even add in a bit of creative license, do some cool things. I think that's what you need to do, basically, in one of these scenarios. So what I would do is this. I would use this anime, Monty, to drop mad gems that you can't say publicly. I'll give you an example. In a purely hypothetical world, I'd have a really old school Korean team that at least one or more players are actually notoriously behind the scenes. It's basically implied they match fixed, but then some of them went on to become maybe champions, maybe top players, and basically they have this hidden past that nobody knows about. Purely hypothetical. It's all just fiction from the writer's pen. So one thing I would love, by the way, an angle I would heavily play up, because it's fucking anime, let's be real, is I would just have it be Faker's the protagonist and his enemy is Doper, isn't it? And Doper's like the bad boy, fucking boosting shit. He's always like, listen, Faker, I could probably take you in a competitive game, but that's for squares, motherfucker. Were you still making 40k a year, bitch? I'll make that in a month. Like, this would be so sick. You can imagine some of the storylines you could do in this. It'd be sick, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I think there's a lot that you could do. Interestingly, one of the gems that people didn't see dropped. So recently, there was somebody at Riot. Her name is Naz, I think, was promoted to be the head of League of Legends esports globally. And I read an interview or a bio of her, and it says that she is the executive producer of a fictional LCS show that apparently is coming out on Paramount Plus in 2022. Okay. And this is actually what I always wanted to do. I actually pitched this to Overwatch League. I co-wrote a script with one of the writers of Family Guy, where I wanted to use the studio for Overwatch League to produce a show about a fictional team during the off days, and then have it be like Entourage, where you actually just put in the real pro players and personalities as cameos
to give it a pop,
to have the pop and make it seem real.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I honestly really hope that, like, nobody picked up on this. I haven't seen anybody talk about it, but I really hope that's what Riot's doing, is using the LCS studio to produce a fictional show based off of a fictional LCS team and then incorporating real LCS personalities. That's what I wanted to do.
Here's the thing. You know, they wouldn't, unfortunately, because it's Riot, have the self-awareness and good humor to add in the real cameos we want. Like, here's a cameo I want. When they all win the LCS game and they're all at the club and they're all fucking trying to angle up some girl, obviously Loco Doco just comes in and he's going like, hey, Jesse, hey, whatever. Like, and he's just fucking everywhere with his phone. I'd have one where a guy who looks suspiciously like Reginald just storms into the fucking room, starts to tell everyone what they're doing wrong. You're fired after this season, Cobby or whatever. You know, like, I'd put in the mad gems that people would really appreciate if they watch the LCS.
So, yeah, unfortunately, the reality is that LCS storytelling is done so badly that I wish this was happening in the LEC, because I'm very suspicious about like how LCS will censor it. And, it needs to be something that's somewhat independent. But it is exciting, and it is an idea that I had several years ago and definitely tried to execute on.
By the way, yeah, keep going.
No, it's about time we just had a fictional, an actual scripted esports show. That's what I think.
As a quick sidebar, because he referenced the Worlds video, right? I noticed all the excuses they were making in the Worlds, because I watched it as well, right? And was like, there must be something wrong here, because I actually have watched League of Legends for like 10 years now, and I can't recognize half these fucking players. I was trying to think the whole time, like, why is Larson got like blonde hair though? And they were like, oh, it's actually reckless. I was like, he isn't even at Worlds. And it turned out basically they had to like guess midway through the year who's going to be there. And so unfortunately, a whole bunch of people they put in the movie aren't at Worlds, right? Here's the thing I have with the problem with there is it's the classic Riot excuse. It always goes like this, Monty. I decided a bunch of arbitrary limitations that I'm now trapped within. Help! Yep. I'm the demiurge and I'm trapped in my own world. Like, why create them? Like, what? Like, this, Monty. We made a sick one. Not me. Like, Flashpoint made a sick intro for Flashpoint 3. Unsurprisingly, just have a bunch of teams out in the bloody tournament. Like, you can definitely time these things out so you can do it.
By the way, now I will say that obviously the Riot intro is a lot more in depth in terms of
the production value is way higher, of course. Yeah,
of course. They have a lot more resources, but also I was dealing with a situation where Device changed teams literally right before our event, and we had to change which team he was on and the scene he was in. Luckily, we did get lucky, admittedly, that it was pretty easy to make that transition. But yeah, this is like I totally thought the same thing when Riot said that, which is like, oh, we had to make these decisions in advance. It's like, no, why don't you design content that can easily be swapped out in terms of the players, or you make a concept where you can be more nimble with it, which I've done, so I know it's possible to do. Like, I literally did that. So it was a little weird. And if you're working with companies, you're working with concepts where the production value is so high that it needs, like, you have to do it that far in advance. You just take a hit on the production value for what I would do is take a hit on the production value to be more nimble, because I value storytelling above production value. That's my hierarchy of like esports values.
Because to me, the problem is, look, I get it that they did that other one. I forget which one it was called. The one where it was all the signature moments, like the odd one or whatever. Well, that one was designed to just celebrate history. It wasn't about they're at this Worlds. If I watch this one, like I say, it would be so anachronistic to go back in 5 years and watch this and go, oh, Reckless was at that World. So, like, the whole bunch of players that fucking aren't there, to me, it's just a bit weird, because I didn't get what the theme was as a result. Like, they were partly going for history, but then they were partly doing, like, the idea was Reckless was going to challenge the people he was fucking going against. He's not, is he?
And they can't even learn this lesson, Thorin, because the best one was Rise, and Rise was about what had already happened at Worlds.
Yeah, that's the one I mean, I think, where it was like the ambition.
It was ambition climbing the mountain. Yeah, it was sick. It was great, but it didn't have to preview the current World.
No,
so if you want to have the high, if you want to have the really high production value, just do that. There's nothing wrong with it. People are just excited by the history, and that does put storytelling and production value. Storytelling is still above production value in that case. So I just find it weird that they make that choice one year and then they make these other choices with players that can't be at Worlds. It's just bizarre. Like I really just wish I was in the room. Well, I wish I had a camera into the room. I don't want to be there. Let's be real. I don't really want to be there, but
I also listen.
I wish I could understand why these decisions were made.
If you know my style, I actually figured out, as mad as it is, that sub-tweeting is more polite than tweeting directly.
Yes, of course.
In the sense, right, that what you should do is attack their idea, not the person. So I'm just going to say, even though this essentially does call out probably half the people who appeared on the show as guests, I do the Skinner meme, like, pathetic. I look down on anyone who really is like, oh my God, 3 hours till the song drops. Like, listen. You might like the songs. I know you can listen to it a lot during Worlds to get it. Like, if this is some like major moment in your life, like take stock, just take stock, man, these aren't good enough songs to be that big a deal, It's not like fucking Radiohead's like, I'm just going to drop a new album tomorrow, or like, it's not some shit like that, is it? Like, come on. Settle down, everyone. Settle down. Yeah, and you'll be hating this song after you heard it 700 times in a row, won't you?
Yeah, we're talking about Imagine Dragons here, not Radiohead, guys. So pretty big difference in quality. All right,
artistic vision, everything. Dude, I'll never get over. This is the one thing I'll never get over is where they had to, like all fucking Americans, push the boat of credulity so far out. It was unbelievable. I could believe, Monty, one or two people in the band knew League of Legends, knew a bit about esports. Obviously played it casually. I could believe that. It's when they said the obvious lie in that feature they did for Riot, where they go, sometimes we'll be getting called on stage and we're like, just let us finish this last game of solo queue. I was like, no, not on every single level, factual, fucking spiritually, metaphorically. No, that is such a barefaced lie. Only an American could watch it and go, yeah, he's saying exactly what I wish was true. So I guess they just really love League of Legends. By the way, have you seen them do anything about League of Legends since that year? Are they on their fucking socials just getting one goal game? No! They are, I'm guessing, well, I don't know, to be fair, but I'm guessing they're not. I'm just going to go ahead and guess. Like every cynical fucking huckster, they just moved on to the next shit and just kept making whatever music they make, I imagine. Am I right? I don't know.
Yeah, they're not even playing the game right. At least Zed is just like going around to every esport, you know? He was out there for League, he's out there for Overwatch, he's out there for Valorant now, you know? He's just collecting checks left and right off of every developer. It's actually smart. It's really smart. He's got guns in the game.
Yeah.
In Valorant now. Also, just a super nice guy in general. Very, very, very like straight up genuine human being. So I liked him a lot when I met him. All right. In CSGO, the term honeymoon phase is used frequently as a point of new teams' success. True. Why isn't the term used in League as much? It is sometimes, but it's a very different. The personalities are very different. I would say CSGO is much more of a personality-driven experience at the team level. Is that fair?
Yeah, basically, like the short version is this. Part of the reason why the honeymoon aspect is so important in CSGO is because in the years gone by, you would go to a LAN like a week after you signed the guy. So what would happen is that's how you knew that like somehow having a new combo gave you sort of like other teams would lag on how to play against you. Because in theory, after a week, you shouldn't be good. You're playing the best teams in the world, but so many times the team that made the right roster move would their first 2 or 3 LANs, they might just be like top 3, even though they were like the 4th best team before. But then once people figured them out, once they started playing a set start, then they would sort of fall off. That's why it was more of a honeymoon phase. The idea was like a honeymoon, you know, everything's going awesome the first few weeks. Then you hit the problems. Then things start to fall apart. Well, I hope certainly not in your marriage, but in theory, in this analogy.
Yeah, I also think League, because most of the teams make roster changes at the same time, it's also a factor because in other games that make roster changes more erratically throughout the year, it's much more obvious when a team makes a roster change that's doing well. Whereas if every team in League is setting their lineup before the season starts, they're all starting in the honeymoon phase. So it's less clear, I would say. So
and
part
also,
of it is the offseason.
The format is the big deal. Like I say, you go to LANs immediately and you get 2 or 3 results. So you can kind of like figure out where they're at. In League, you just start week 1 of LCS or whatever, don't you? So you got that massive stretch ahead of you. No one really cares if you have an up and down at the beginning. So I think it just sort of gets masked by the format. If you had LANs like Season 2 circuit, I think you'd see it a bit more in League. And people would chop and change way more like they used to, you know?
All right. Unlike Dota or League and CSGO, lineups are with mixed nationalities are tagged international. Should that distinction be removed from CSGO, taken to other esports? I would say CSGO has more single nation teams than other esports, which is why like most other esports have international lineups are the norm, right? Like you very rarely in League of Legends see a team that, unless it's a Korean team, right? Koreans are the only teams that have all Koreans for the most part in the league, because even the Chinese teams have Korean players, right?
Yes.
So out of the major regions, you would say most rosters are internationally mixed, whereas many of the dominant rosters in CSGO are single nation teams.
Oh, interestingly enough, the last couple of years, we have started to even break those. Like the 2 major ones that were literally mind-blowing is when Fnatic is now technically primarily UK. Fnatic was always Swedish because Swedish CS was fantastic. And the other one was French CSGO. Even though Vitality is a top team, the G2 lineup, that used to be all French as well. And that is now also primarily not French. So there is a bit of change. Like I feel like in the modern day, it's partly because of how contracts have opened and the fact that we have like FPL where all the international talents play. It's going a little bit more the way of Dota, but I have to say, if you just look who the really great teams in the world are, they are primarily still the teams that are like one amazing country with the best players, and you just keep that same roster, same culture, same language. So I think in CS, there'll always be an element of that. It's just I do think it's slightly going the way of Dota.
Okay, seeing as both LoL Worlds and TI won't have a crowd, will the CS Major be the best event of the year? I mean, certainly looking very exciting.
Yeah, theoretically. I mean, the only downside basically for the CSGO Major is CSGO is the ultimate LAN game. And normally, how we even judge people's fitness is you've got to have played a load of LANs that year and a load of LANs in the run-up. Realistically, a lot of the teams at this Major, unfortunately, I just think the quality of play won't necessarily be as high as it was at past Majors. Like, people will just be a little bit rusty, or they'll be in a scenario, like even the great players. Dude, it's been like 2 or 3 years since they were in front of a massive crowd. So in that scenario, I think potentially the potential for it to be like not the most high-level player one of all time is there. I just think everyone's so starved for a massive LAN that I think it'll have hype around it no matter what.
Yeah, it seems like
I'm there. So I'm back. The king's fucking back. I'll be lopping off heads left and right, just taking everyone down. It's in Sweden, by the way. And I tell you what, you might think, oh, bloody hell, all that stuff you said about Poland. I have no problem saying more than that about Sweden. They won't fucking kick me out. So don't even worry about it.
I also think the CS Major is pretty wide open in terms of who could win it as well, which is very exciting. It feels up for grabs. Same way as Worlds, actually. I mean, frankly, what I don't understand is how traditional sports can be done in full stadiums right now, but for some reason esports events can't be. That boggles my mind.
That's you know, there's a threshold of money and bribes that we haven't quite gotten to. Listen, we have fucking Chinese money in league, so Tencent, it's the other way around, mate. Tell the government you need more money. You need more fucking payoffs. I tell you what, the Arabs in fucking soccer, they're killing it right now, mate. They're getting everything they want. So I agree, Monty. Where are the bloody massive stadiums for Worlds? What the hell's that?
It's a little weird that everywhere else in Europe seems to be okay with this, and somehow we can't have it for Worlds. What's the juiciest team impulse story you can share publicly? I don't know any team impulse stories, actually. Do you know any juicy team impulse stories? That's kind of it's a niche question.
The problem with that question isn't the most obvious one, the famous one that like Zhao got like whatever banned or something, it fucked the whole team. If you remember, that was the team where that had like a mad like outside chance. It had impact when he was really good still. Rush was a monster, and then Zhao was always like LCS. But that was the team that actually I would have liked to have seen play out the playoffs. Basically, that was the one where they kind of like gimped the fucking storylines where they did that. So yeah, I thought that was a sad state of affairs. The problem is though, unfortunately, like think of some of those players. Like we don't know the background story because guess what? We weren't connected with like Zhao and Impact back there. Like, you know, these are players and Rush. Like, that's the problem. You need it to be LCS players. Put it this way, I'll tell you a different one, but I won't say the name of the player, right? I'll make this very careful. And what's good is I know the fans will not be able to guess this, but you might have heard this story, Monty. I basically heard there was once a player in LCS, big name player, who sort of just went nuts when he was in the LCS and did mad shit, like just send an opponent like a picture of his dick and just go like, yeah, I'm playing against you next. You like that? And that was like an intimidation thing he did. Like, I won't say who, and I'm keeping it very, very careful so they can never guess, Monty. But like, I heard that happen for real. And when I heard this, I was like, holy moly, this is another world altogether. Like that doesn't even enter into your brain. I don't even know how that's intimidating. Because listen, either way, if your dick was small, it's like, what are you doing there? And if it's massive, it's like, why are you sending him that picture? Like, none of it makes sense. I still don't even get what the idea was. That was one of those moments. Like, I mean, people will vaguely know a different story at the Quads one. We sort of went a bit nuts. Some of these are stories that like you just put them on a list. Like, why is this even happening? What?
Yep.
These would be in my anime, put it that way, but they'd be with different names, obviously, you know.
Xi Jinping is going to apologize to us. Rare that you get from the Chinese premier an apology about prying into the rally question. Curious about our general feelings on the service, as I know you are not crypto zealots, new companies. Esports has no dearth of hucksters and con men. Also, he says that the DJ esports thing, Thorin, can be played by people in the US, unlike most esports betting. Actually, so there's several problems with this. Esports betting is actually legal in most states now. So that's just not true in the US. Sports betting has come a long way in the last couple of years. Esports betting is legal in, I think, like 37 or 42 states right now. And we're going to see more books roll that out. I personally don't have a problem with betting. Just don't bet money that you can't afford to lose. If you want to enjoy things that way, go for it. I'd rather have it regulated than in some kind of weird black market. So I'm happy that we're seeing more legal sports betting in the US because let's be real, it was happening anyway. And now at least it can be regulated and made official, which is a lot better. Also, in regards to Rally, the difference between Grogcoin and what Rally does and traditional crypto is it's not speculation. We are creating value for our own currency, right? The value that you have with other crypto is that it is predicated on other people doing things for it or it having some sort of innate value in relation to another economy. What we are doing with these questions is we are saying, here is the value you get, and we're going to do more things in the future that are going to roll out additional value. So if you would like to participate in this economy where we are going to provide value and are providing value for you, we have 100% control over that, right? So it's different because it's a closed system that we are creating here where the value is generated by us and you decide whether that value is worth engaging in, right? So there's not really any kind of hucksterism here or conning because you know exactly what you're getting into from the start. And it's also Rally's run by very, very reputable people. It was founded by Kevin Chu, who is the wealthy guy who started Gen G as well. Any new people who come into Rally are voted in by the community of creators to have their own coin. So it's run by the people who are on the platform already. So there's not really a way that it could be used for any kind of con. Right.
I've got kind of a unique take on crypto because here's the thing. I'm not an expert. I also don't know absolutely nothing. I know a little bit. Here's the problem I have. I would say one of my meta skills that I mastered in esports, so I put in thousands of hours doing this, from interviewing people, talking private, is I think I'm very good at parsing other people's opinions and seeing which ones make sense or which ones sound like the person doesn't quite believe it themselves, or this is one that actually, they really do. Like you'll notice on shows, I can kind of get out with people when I know they've got something spicy, or I can challenge them when they're not sort of really giving their real opinion. My problem is this: when I've applied this skill set to the people I consider to be within the framework of crypto experts, they're all over the fucking place. And here's my problem. They remind me of esports experts, where they are experts, but I tell you what, they're terrible at predicting. They're terrible at predicting. And here's why esports experts and crypto experts are fucking terrible at predicting. Because here's the problem. Predicting actually, unlike in like the scientific or whatever area, where it's essentially necessary, otherwise you don't know what you're talking about. In esports, there are so many factors that could affect whether a team wins or loses, whether a player plays well, whether the meta applies this way or a totally different way in the game. Similarly with a stock, there are, put it this way, even just talking about a stock has an observer effect, where if you're Elon Musk, it can make the stock go up and down. You yourself can directly be a god that influences, or like some titan that just washes over a whole scene. So there are so many factors. I've found the similarity goes like this. That's why we say it's not about if you get the prediction right or wrong. It's about why did you make the prediction. What I tend to find is when people who are really smart analysts in either area get it wrong, it's because what they tended to do was select the variables they wish would be true or they prefer, and they just extrapolate out that, like, if it's LS, well, this team that plays very clean macro, they will win the game because they'll have the most consistent, it's like some angle. But meanwhile, maybe IG wins with some crazy chaotic style. So to me, I find that's the issue, because I heard, for example, last year, Rally basically runs on, I think, the Ethereum network, and I was hearing last year people that know loads about crypto going, that's pretty going to be dead next year, like it's going down, it can't last. I think Ethereum is like almost its highest it's ever been compared to history. So again, my problem with the crypto people is basically just that. It's that they all just say when it's going up, oh, bloody knew it. And then nobody ever fucking tells you when to sell, do they? You never find a single one of them tells you when to sell. So again, I've just sort of waffled around, but that's why I'm never going to be mad deep on crypto. I'm interested a little bit. I don't find it to be the be all end all that a lot of people do, Right. I don't think, like Monty says, I don't think it is either a scam or it was totally legit. I think it's between the two, and you have to pick which people you trust,
Yeah, and the thing about, say, Ethereum is that you don't know what the use case for Ethereum is. If you own Ethereum right now, you don't necessarily know how you're going to use it because you don't know who's going to be providing value for it. Whereas you can choose to buy or not buy Grogcoin, but we are providing our own uses for it that you will know what all of the uses are as we continue to roll them out. You know what all the uses are right now, which is asking questions on this show. It's not an investment, right? It's a way to support the show if you so choose. And that's it. We just have our own economy. And why we want this is because it's useful. Because right now, content creators have a problem with switching platforms or being deplatformed or any of the other ways that companies like Google or companies like Twitch can take away your income. And this is a way that you can freely switch between platforms and not worry about being deplatformed by companies that have specific motives, right? There is no way that Rally can deplatform us because it exists independently and we have a stash of Grogcoin. That's it.
By the way, here's another thing that they should obviously think about. Obviously, it isn't about speculation for Grogcoin, because it would actually hurt us if Grogcoin went up like Bitcoin did. And now just to ask a question costs like $15,000. Like, that would be bad for us objectively. No fucker except some guy in Dubai would ask the question, would he? And all you other fuckers would just never sell. You just hold forever. Like, so yeah, you have to realize it has to be like what you said. It has to have a purpose in our specific case, because we're using it only for that purpose right now.
Yeah. So we will create more purposes for it, guys. If you want to support us, go ahead. If you don't, whatever, it's fine. But the idea here is that it makes us more independent, makes it more difficult to censor, makes it easier so we could sign theoretically deals with different platforms and transfer easier in the future. We can sell merch potentially in the future. We can sell other events.
And we reward the people who got in early. They at least get they get something. It gets a bit cheaper for them essentially.
Yeah, basically, like if you got in early, then if we're charging the equivalent US dollar value in Grog coins, you effectively are paying less money for these things. So it rewards people who support you. That's it.
There you go.
So what was the greatest moment of serendipity in your esports career? As in, what unexpected event outside of your control happened that resulted in bolstering of your careers or an otherwise positive outcome? Well, it was me randomly getting hired by OGN. That was definitely it for me, where I was casting for MLG and I applied for the OGN position. They gave it to me and told me I had 2 weeks to move from New York to Korea for the start of the season in winter 2012. And I just basically had to go move to a country I had never been to before in order to take the job instantly and quit my job at a law firm. So that was it for sure.
I mean, I think the obvious one to me, because everyone always misunderstands the story, is when I was on Inside the NBA on TNT, because they were doing the E-League Road to Vegas, and we were in Vegas at like CES, which is a trade show, and I had that banter with Shaq. Yes, I obviously had the first joke written because that was just something I was delivering into a mic with no one interrupting me. So I said the joke about how Shazam, who funnily enough is actually a relevant player in Valorant now, but at the time played for Optic. I was like, obviously Shazam happened, and I'm not talking about Kazam, the terrible movie Shaq made. I had that joke set up, right? But I could never know that he would essentially set me up for an obvious joke everyone always makes about Shaq, which is that his playing weight was always mad suspect and he was always a little bit overweight. If you ever know that show, that's one of the few topics that if you go at, he's always mad sensitive about. I could never know he's going to try and throw it back onto us by talking about how gaming's a sport and that he'll beat us in any sport. Because remember, competitive eating is actually a fucking sport. So the second he said that in my mind, I was just like, it was like Tetris. You know the feeling when that line just, you get exactly the right block and it goes, it's the straight block. It goes all the way down that massive well you've made. And then you get that, like 5 of them disappear. That's what it felt like the second he said that, because I just knew, oh, you fool. I have you in the palm of my hand right now, and then I just said it going. And also, let's be real, Americans, they like lowbrow humor, so essentially just going, yeah, but you're fat, aren't you? Everyone is just like, oh shit, oh god damn you, god. Like, wasn't the most fucking enlightened in sort of all time, was it? But whatever, it worked. So there's a nice moment of serendipity. Thanks, Shaq. Believe it or not, he actually gave me the layup.
There you go. There you
go. Cheers. Thanks.
All right. What's your favorite bet in esports history? Remember when Reggie lost 100K betting on TSM? That was a pretty good one.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one. That was pretty mental, wasn't it? Yeah. When Steve was with Steve Arnett. Yeah. Let me think.
I don't know. I don't know about any like big bets other than that one.
I mean, I'll give you a good one just because it's actually really unfair if you know the context, which is Double Lift. Actually, bizarrely, I don't know why he decided this out of nowhere, but in like early 2015, he did a tweet about this. He actually did just try to like befriend me in some weird way where he like added me on Skype to start like chatting about stuff. And in chatting, right, because at the time, CLG was still like a team trying to get to the next level and, you know, they were like still competing with TSM. He basically made a bet where he told me privately, like, oh, we're going to win the split. And I was like, oh, you still believe that? And so I said to him, look, I'll make you a bet now privately. If you win, obviously I'll say whatever you want on Twitter, but if I win, you have to tweet that I am Lord Thorin, and here's what people are going to love. The split that he did the bet on was Season 5 Spring. So Seasons 5 spring, they fucked it like usual. He had to call me Lord Thorin. All they did is change Paul Belter and the coach, and they did win the next split. So I even told him, like, that's actually mad unfair. You did that. You actually probably had some core element that did make sense, and you were sort of right that you could have won it, but like, unlucky you didn't. So you had to call me Lord Thorin. You can go look up the tweet, still exists. So everyone out there who goes, ha ha, TSM live in your head rent free. Motherfucker, I'm in their lives, you moron. You're the one. I live in your head. You're a TSM fan who's hated me since 2014, and 7 years later, probably more than a tenth of your entire lifespan in this realm, you are still tweeting at me. I live in your head rent free. In fact, the other way around. Because I block some of you, I now charge rent. I don't even know how that analogy works. I scuffed it in the end there. Whatever.
I mean, my least favorite bet in esports history was that one we lost to Loco Doco.
That was bad.
Completely cheesed us on, like, you know,
that was some BS on it at all. That was some bullshit one in that one. It was so boring. And then winning in 5 games twice. Like, get the fuck out of my face. That was so egregious on it. I know, it was so bullshit, that bet. It was so bullshit.
We learned a valuable lesson about locking the bets to the roster you have, because with Glebe Glarbu, they definitely wouldn't have done that.
What I learned about that, Monty, was just like contract law. It's like, it's all about the details. You got to get all the caveats exactly nailed away, otherwise you can just get completely fucked by a loophole, can't you?
All right, if you could go back in time and make League of Legends before Riot, what kind of changes would you make? Well, the great news is that Riot wouldn't be making it, which is the most important change that you could ever possibly make to League of Legends.
Yes. Are you ready for the real boomer take? Basically, as long as League as we know it doesn't exist, there is no League to become the #1 MOBA game. So what I would do, this is God tier, no one's thought this one through, I would basically make League just like Hon, but free to play, because if that happened, dude, that would have been a very interesting split between Dota and Hon, because all the Dota pros were playing Hon at the time, and then what happened was, because they made it like you had to pay still, and then all these, like, they didn't sort of update with the times, everyone just went to Dota 2 and they had it international, and the rest of its history. But I remember loads of my people who were my Dota guys, like from teams I'd worked in and stuff, they were all telling me Hon was the best of the 3, dude. They were like, this is the one I want to play. It's like old school Dota, but like new graphics, got all the mechanics you love. So I remember thinking that would have been the game changer, because people don't know at the time there was a massive war behind the scenes. There was even more MOBAs that didn't make it. That, like, there was like 5 or 6, and any of them could have kind of been the one, you know, and then it just happened that League, and then in Dota in a hardcore way, they're the ones that won out. In fact, I believe there was even a story where literally, a lot of people don't know this, Ice Frog in some level also helped with League and with Hon and with like a 4th one, and then ended up with Dota. So the amount of behind the scenes shenanigans and Game of Thrones shit was huge.
All right, here's a weird question that I don't know if we're going to be able to answer. What would test a philosophy the best in your opinion/experience? An environment that is focused on a holistic discipline like the military or a degree in medicine, one where those around you have an immediate base respect for you, like a theoretical guru position, or where you have to start completely out of your comfort zone to achieve the same state. Or lastly, where you know, if necessary, you can fall back on other ways to explore the path, art, research within a familiar environment. So like a philosophical testing. I mean, me personally, I'm always for the most extreme test of that philosophy. So if it can't survive high conflict and a brutal, like, environment, then I don't think it can hold much water. And I think if you had immediate base respect, then it prevents people from actually challenging your positions, and that a holistic discipline is already a philosophy that is seen as legitimate and a system that is seen as legitimate. So it's very difficult to test other things within that system. So I'm straight into enemy territory on that one, in my opinion.
Yeah, as soon as he said it, I thought the 3rd one, because the logical thing is, if you've just got a load of chaotic variables and factors and nothing's established, wouldn't that cut through all the bullshit they've messed if you had the philosophy? So I feel like that's the one that works, you know.
Yeah, and also I feel like people are unwilling to test their philosophies because they're unwilling to put themselves into, like, sail into the storm, as it were. But that's the only way you can actually live life effectively, in my opinion.
Put it this way, without making a whole sidebar, the most obvious counter you can ever give to someone who truly philosophically believes some form of socialism is the best way to have a society is you are aware, by that logic, if it was actually efficacious, you could do it without the government's help, you moron. You could make an actual commune and you could run it along your own philosophy. You could even fund it initially, and you could show that it's a better way to live. But you don't ever do that, because the joke is they want to use your money, not their money. So no fucker does it, except the odd nut amateurs that do probably usually get killed, unfortunately, tragically.
I think if you're talking about a philosophy, you and I, Thorin, have a different philosophy to esports, both to each other and also to many other organizational bodies and everything like that. I say we're aligned more than we disagree by a long shot. But for the most part, if I look at my life and my philosophy on my career, if I hadn't gotten into public fights with Riot or taken the stances that I've had, I would actually be less successful and make less money and have less control over the industry than I do right now. It is because I have battle tested my philosophy even against, multi-billion-dollar companies that has won me the respect of the people that want to empower me. And then I've been empowered within those fields. Like if I was still working as I make more money than any caster who works for Riot. So, and I have a higher level of control over my own destiny, over what I say, over what I do. And so, I'm pretty happy with where things are at right now overall. And I think that the question to my own philosophy has played out in a very positive way when I look at how I interacted with the landscape of my career.
For me, the fact that the consensus mainstream approach to esports is so different to us necessitates we exist. We are the counter, essentially. Like, I would basically say the analogy is this. If you can't be SK Telecom, fucking Rox Tigers, Azubu, but if you can't be the best Koreans and just do it the standard way, you want to be like Moscow 5 or fucking G2 and have a totally unique approach. Because that in itself will have a value. Like we're basically saying about this industry approach,
Last year, TSM went 0-6. By happenstance, what was followed was the NA orgs going full gotcha gamer in their acquisition of players. So if 2 or more teams go 0-6 this year, speculate on the cost the following season. They're not going to go 0-6. It's really rare. It's rare that teams go 0-6. Again, we brought this up earlier, but the only 2 teams from a major region to go 0-6 in the last 5 years were Clutch and TSM. Clutch had a very hard group. TSM
understandable on that one.
Yeah, TSM was a huge surprise, which is why they're all the memes, but also was great. Clearly, it was very enjoyable. But I don't think that's going to happen. I
also think if you look at the teams, it's the least likely year, because think about 100 Thieves. They've just literally built this whole project for 2 years to this point. They're not going to abandon it now under the reigning champions. And then Team Liquid and Cloud9, the rosters on paper, the cores are too good. Like no one's abandoning these entire cores and just taking out 3 players. You might take 1 player out, but that's why I also think these specific teams, it would be different if TSM had made it, EG had made it. Teams that were on the brink, they might have completely changed roster based on what happens. Who knows?
Yeah, and I think we've discussed this before, but if you're C9, like the roster change you're most likely to make, given the available players, is probably Blabber for somebody else. And not because Blabber's bad, but because the synergy between the solo lanes and Blabber is bad. And you're not going to ditch Perks and Fudge and keep Blabber. Like that's not what you're going to do. And then on the other side, it's probably replacing Tactical on Team Liquid.
Yes.
So, regarding the Maoan incident, how severe do you think matchmaking and overall industry fuckery are in PCS and LPL? Who knows is the answer. Incidentally, are there insider secrets that may jeopardize people's careers or even their lives if revealed?
Lords.
I mean, I can tell you right now, there is undisclosed match fixing that happened in Korea during my time there. I'm not going to be the one who reveals what happened. I
kind of alluded to something like that earlier, basically, if people were listening. It has happened. The problem is this. You will never, ever hear about it in the West. Because first of all, none of the people who do it just for clout have any journalistic skills. So they can't contact someone deep in the Korean scene or in the Chinese scene. And then also, believe it or not, we're at the level now, at least with match fixing, where you can also just get killed over this shit. Who the fuck wants to die over a shit video game? Yeah. Not even Dota, just fucking League of Legends.
Especially things that happened many years ago, right?
Who wants to die over that? I don't,
And it's also the fact that, well, I know it happened. I don't have the evidence, and the evidence is very, very difficult to acquire because the way that Korean journalism works is not really journalism. It's basically covering up incidents that happen so that esports doesn't look bad, because the journalists want to continue to have jobs. And when we saw the match fixing implosion in Brood War, which basically tanked the esports industry in Korea for many years. A bunch of companies pulled out. The journalists themselves lose their jobs.
Yep.
So it's not really in their best interest to reveal a bunch more shady shit that definitely did happen when I was casting in Korea.
Basically, you've got a world full of Travis Gaffords and not one Richard Lewis.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
That's league in a nutshell, in it. In some ways,
and to be blunt, I have literally had conversations with Korean journalists where they tell me they know this happened and that no, they're not going to report on it.
If people don't know, by the way, I don't actually consider myself an investigative journalist. Now, I certainly know the basics a lot more than some of these fucking people, either anonymous or not anonymous, in League. But the only reason I even do any of the stories in League, like the Double Lift and Lena one and the fucking Jap one and Reckless from G2, is because the difference is, if I got a story like that handed to me in CSGO, I just pass it to Richard. He's the best. But since I know he's not in League in that regard, I'm sorry, I don't actually trust some of the other even established people, because some of them have shown behind the scenes they might kill a story if the right owner said, don't do that. So on these ones, sometimes they're just ones where I'm like, this is such a big story, it has to get out there. Fuck it, I'll just have to do it myself. So that kind of tells you where League is at in terms of the temperature for the journalists. Unfortunately, it's just not really that sort of space. It's about roster moves in League. It ain't about like trying to expose like corruption and stuff. It's not really that kind of space, unfortunately.
Yeah, and as far as I know, at least in China, what I've heard is that like Chinese soccer, Chinese football is just like rife with match fixing. That's just what people have told me. And so it wouldn't necessarily surprise me. I mean, we knew it was happening at the kind of secondary level in Chinese League of Legends. Wouldn't surprise me if it was happening at the top level in Chinese League of Legends. I don't know about PCS, but these are all suppositions. I will say that
angle that's not as bad though. This might sound mental, but it's not like, don't think match fixing is only my entire team agrees to lose game X. One of the reasons in soccer, by the way, that it became a big thing, I've heard, Monty, is because they made all those micro bets in soccer. So you don't even have to lose the game. It's just you take a specific throw in it. You know what I mean? You do one thing, or you just do an action. Like, for example, you foul a guy like 5 minutes into the game and that has like high odds or something. So basically, I would imagine it's something similar in League. Like, the team might not even throw the game. They might just give up first blood or give up the first dragon or int bizarre. You know, you could. So in some ways, it's not quite as bad as it might seem. It's not like everyone's throwing the game and just getting 100k and like purposely changing the entire results. I would imagine it's more marginal cases where one player could control a variable, you know.
And as weird as it is to talk about this, it actually is better than it used to be, guys. Like, there is less match fixing than there used to be historically in esports. Because there's more money in the scene now. So players, the risk has gone up and the reward has gone down because, you know, when you're making $1 million a year, throwing a game for 100K doesn't seem like such a good value proposition as opposed to when you're making 40K a year and you could throw a game for 100K. So I think the thing is money goes up in the scene, it will actually lessen the issues regarding players fixing matches. You know, you don't really see that. It's like, take traditional sports. There was famously the White Sox fixing the World Series in the 20s, right? But that doesn't happen anymore. Sure, like the Astros cheat, but you know, the money that baseball players make now is just not even remotely worth it for them to try and throw a match. Is the Maoan incident?
Is Pete Rose to the Hall of Fame? I don't even know anything about baseball. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. Is the Maoan incident a horseman-worthy issue? Probably not.
It is, in theory, but like I just alluded to, we can't talk about all the shit. So, and Richard isn't really in like League side of it. He's only in the CSGO side. So I just don't think there'd be enough there, unfortunately. Like, it could be a great topic, but not right now.
Yeah, and the Maoan incident also was probably one of the more minor incidents of like betting. Like, he literally leaked some picks to a friend, right? It wasn't like he was going to make a bunch of money of this. He even said, as far as I understand from the translations, like, oh, you know, don't put a lot of money on this. It was just dumb. Like, it was dumb shit. But like, for example, I wouldn't ban Maoan forever if I was in control of this situation, because it's not like he was working with organized crime. It's not like he was intentionally going to throw the match. There's no indication that he didn't intend to play at his best. It was some picks that they were discussing, and it was to a personal relation, like a friend, not to some sort of shady criminal entity, right? And to lump this in the same boat as like the Savior match fixing scandal is just like egregious in comparison, right? That was a very, very bad incident of match fixing or life in StarCraft 2. This is, I would ban him for a year or two, but I don't even think it's worth a lifetime ban. I think he's just a moron. I don't think it was super malicious. Thoughts on dropping the Grogcoin entry price? 25 Grog is now over $250. Well, congratulations to you who got the Grog when that was like $50 instead of 250. Maybe But here's the thing. I also don't want to cheapen the value for people who purchased Grog early. So we need to provide other forms of value first for you.
Yeah, remember, as long as in theory we had some other things, it's not even that egregious. Because remember, like once you buy it, you've got the 25. So basically, for life, you could just ask questions as long as the Grogcoin exists. It's not like it's
And you can sell it
every year, is it? Like, you know.
Yeah, and you can sell it. You're not actually like, you know, maybe it goes up, maybe it goes down. It's not an investment again, but it's gone up by 5x since the beginning.
Also,
so.
I don't mean to sound heartless, but do we seem like we're lacking questions? There's loads of questions. So
we
basically,
just spent like 45 minutes on these questions.
Here's the thing. If you're too poor to buy it, like I said, it'd be different if it was 5,000. If you're just too poor to buy it, welcome to life. You can't afford luxury goods. You have to wear the shit tennis shoes, and we're all wearing Nike Air Max. Those fucking Air Force Ones, baby, with a white sheen on the side. I'm like fucking old school. I don't know who even wore Nike. Nelly, there you go. I each done a song about Air Force Ones, and whatever. Keep going.
So, yeah, maybe, but we'll need to look over that. Like I said, I don't want to have too many questions, and I don't want to devalue the people who, you know, decided to support us early. So there you go. We'll provide other forms of value for you guys, and maybe we'll revisit that at a later date. All right. Well, that's the last question for today. I'm not even going to say this week because we're going to have another show on Thursday the 14th because Riot decided that we have to have everything compacted into a tiny ass schedule. So we have group games. We're going to see the first round robin tomorrow, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then on the 14th, we will have another show halfway through groups. And then after that, there's going to be 4 days. And then we will have a show on the 19th of October, correct? Yes, on the 19th of October, which will be the show to round out the group stages and is my birthday. So we can all enjoy my 35th birthday together. So, yeah, we'll be doing a couple more of these, and then we'll be back into a regular rhythm of after quarters and when Thorin has time because he's working the major. So we'll work on the schedule around when his broadcasts are.